Hey everyone. Hope you're all doing well. We're all about bringing high-quality web novel audiobooks to life, and most of our content is completely free to enjoy. Just a quick note, web novels and web novel audiobooks aren't the same thing. Simply reading a novel out loud doesn't always make for a great listening experience. That's why I go through multiple rounds of rewriting and careful editing for every chapter to make sure the narration flows naturally and immerses you in the story, just like reading it yourself. These audiobooks are not just direct copies of the original novels. I've adapted them for a smoother, more engaging experience. And to be fully transparent, these adaptations are made for commercial purposes, so some chapters are paid content. But don't worry, this process is fully copyright compliant. I do all of this because I truly love web novels and audiobooks. I'm a huge fan, and this story is one of my personal favorites. YouTube update: recently, YouTube flagged some of our content for including mature themes, realistic violence, and darker story elements. As a result, we've decided to stop uploading anything that violates YouTube's guidelines. If you'd like access to the full, uncut versions including the more intense or mature content, you can find them on our Patreon page, where we upload everything first. Available now on Patreon: I Am a Legendary Boss audiobook, Versatile Mage starting with the White Tiger Pendant, Naruto the Wind Calamity, the Necromancer is amassing troops like crazy in the apocalypse, the mighty dragons are dead, Naruto, leader of Hidden Grass Village, Naruto Uchiha's Unserious Saga, your lord has a screw loose, Apocalypse I can see the health point bar, killing monsters drops loot, Starsea Fleet Age of the Lord, my monster fuses everything, Naruto, I traveled with a max level account, Fate in Bleach Unlimited Blade Works, killed for 100 years in Hueco Mundo, Aizen invited me to Soul Society, the world conquest giving birth to become a god, my master only breaks through on the edge of death, Bleach the Invincible Slacker from Rukongai, Naruto's Special Shop, One Piece the strongest female pirate cruise, Reborn as Danzō's grandson, must I offend the entire ninja world, Naruto starting with snatching the Mangekyo Sharingan, Naruto Card King, in Hueco Mundo with Shindu template, Naruto the Hidden Danzō, my journey as 4th Kusagakure, Naruto Troublesome Ninja Haruto, Naruto the Hyuga Mastermind, Bleach the strongest Shinigami, Bleach the 5th Division Captain, Fate Ultimate Antagonist, Fate of DXD, Fate I Heard After Death, you can ascend to the throne of heroes, Fate DXD Archer Reborn, Fate beginning with Type Moon, a Berserk Heart, Fate Grand Order Insert, One Piece take the Uchiha clan to the Grand Line, One Piece don't worry, I'm a doctor, building harem and dungeon with monster girls, DXD, Multiverse the day-to-day life of the Sephiroth hero, I'm the bad guy but heroines are obsessed with me, in Naruto, I have an affair with Mikoto and Kushina, many children bring happiness, a shameless start, Naruto Reborn with a Tenseigan, Naruto sleeping invincible, One Piece, life choice ask me to kiss marine goddess Hina, reborn as the genius son of the richest family, start by eating jacket fruit model, jacket human devil fruit, the days of being the richest man in the ninja world, the Witcher and Madara Uchiha, villain I possess the dragon Yang Dao physique, all saintesses turns into villainesses, all beautiful girls want to stick with me, interdimensional farming in another world, Naruto from Hidden Leaf Village to One Piece, and more. Most of our content there is free, and it's the best place to follow and support our work. The default audio speed is set to 3x, but if that's too fast for you, just let me know, I'm happy to adjust it. Got a favorite web novel you'd love to hear as an audiobook? Drop a suggestion. I'm always open to new ideas. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, X for the latest updates, new releases, and behind-the-scenes content. Thanks so much for your continued support and happy listening. Chapter 1. A young man called Anger grew town, located in the province of Yamai. As the month of the freezing earth made its debut for the year, this remote little town far from the center of the Goldspank Empire suddenly welcomed a team of knights clad in silver armor, holding banners with a family emblem above their ranks. Parcel, an old scholar living in the town, widened his eyes and began to shiver in cold sweat upon seeing the emblem on these banners, a python entangled around a full moon, with a fierce tiger stomping on its body. Dim was the only blacksmith in town, and also a neighbor of Parcel. He noticed the unusual expression on Parcel's face. Not putting down the hookah he had been smoking, he asked Parcel in wonder, "Hey old pal, look at you. You know where these riders come from?" Taking a deep breath, Parcel whispered to Dim, "If my eyes do not fail me, that mark is the family emblem of the Morn family." The Morns? Dim could only look back at Parcel in shock. "Are you absolutely sure?" Without waiting for an answer, Dim jolted, realizing something, and dashed into his small blacksmith shop, shutting the door like a coward. Through the glass window of the shop, Parcel saw the trembling figure of Dim and shook his head. This nasty pair would normally joke about each other in a situation like this, But the Morn family had visited Gru Town today out of the blue. Considering how powerful they were in the entire empire, Dim had all the reason to be terrified like this. Parcel recalled hearing those rumors in the Hunters' pub back in the city. The Morn family had been called the backbone of Goldspank Empire. At least 6 great military generals emerged from it during the centuries after they earned unparalleled merit against several foreign invasions. Besides, none of the family members languished in the back during all those wars. Every single one of them were brave and cunning warriors fighting on the front line. It was only natural that such a formidable uncelebrated family had seized control of all military affairs in the empire. Recently, military conflict was imminent between Goldspank Empire and its neighbor, the Halen Imperials. The border of Halen Imperials was not far from Gru Town. Perhaps, the Knights of the Morns came just for this reason. Parcel could think of 2 possible outcomes for their arrival. They either came to recruit, or set up defenses. Or maybe both. However, either meant deadly news for Dim the blacksmith. For it was clearly written in the law of conscription of Goldspank Empire that every family in a city or town that fell within the area of the conscription had to provide a young adult, or offer 100 gold pieces for a conscription-free token. Dim was the only able male in his family and at the prime age for recruitment. If he went away for war, his wife and daughter would have no means of survival. As for coins, the only family in the entire town that might have enough money for the fee was the Pat family. Heck, 1 gold piece was enough to support Dim's family for half a year. Parcel got out of his shock quick enough. Anyway, an old bachelor like him had nothing to worry about. He'd kick the bucket soon enough. He even had the mind to watch the Morn family make their move. They did not go to the town mayor. So they're not here to recruit? Parcel kept watching as the iron hooves headed towards another direction. Towards the mansion of Viscount Padger, a place that still bloomed with grass and flowers even in the month of freezing earth. The Pat Manor. A pair of maids wearing cream-colored linen headscarves were chattering during their work. They were talking about the 2 young sons of the Pat family. Master and mistress passed away 2 years ago. According to the law of the empire, in the month of frost following this month of freezing earth, the eldest master will inherit the family title, the maid with an apple-shaped face said with a hint of worry. I wonder what will become of the young master after that. Ori, let's not talk about the family business as servants. Personally though, I don't think you should worry about it at all. You probably don't know because you were working at the tea garden far from the mansion, but the 2 masters are quite close to each other. Those family conflicts you read about in the drama books won't happen here, the maid with a pockmarked face giggled. The sound of horse hooves came from the narrow trail outside of the garden. Soon, a rider wearing shining bronze armor appeared in front of the maids. He halted his horse at the garden entrance and removed his helmet. He was a vigorous young man with brown hair. The sunlight somewhat deepened the lines and curves on his face, giving the already handsome man an even more extraordinary look. Those gray-green irises swept past the maids and finally fixed on the middle-aged maid standing beside Ori. Greetings to you, head maid Mana. Mana dropped the basket she had been holding and bowed to the knight. Greetings, Master Leon. Leon looked at the freshly picked tea leaves in the basket and sighed. My brother went to that old man again? Mana lowered her head and replied with courtesy, Master Inger went to study at Mr. John's. Leon twitched his lip and muttered to himself, study? What the heck's going on with that old geezer, talking about his fallacy all day? Now, brother learns from him and gives him tea too. That man's just a psycho. I have no idea why brother insists on going there. He pulled on the reins in annoyance. I see. You can continue with your work, I'll go look for him. With that, Leon gave his horse a soft kick and trotted away. A while later, Leon came to the southeast corner of the manor where an exquisitely designed wooden house supported by suspension stilts sat on a small hill near the woods. It has raising eaves and 2 parallel levels. Only one side of the house actually touched the earth, the other 3 stayed in the air, merely supported by stilt pillars. No matter how you looked at it, this wooden house didn't sit well among any of the structures in Goldspank Empire. Leon couldn't even recall seeing such similar buildings during his travels in the other nations. What a curious house. It looks sturdy though most of it doesn't have solid ground. Leon was still frustrated about how the old man occupied too much of his brother's time, but that didn't stop him from admiring the amazing craftsmanship of the structure. He just didn't show that on his face. Besides, it's the house that Leon was interested in, not John himself. Maybe this was a common sight from where John came? Although Leon never figured out where that was even when John had been living in the Pat Manor for nearly 20 years. Pushing open the wooden bars, Leon saw some vegetables and fruits growing in the yard. There were some withered vines crawling on the racks nearby. They grew hanging clusters in the month of harvest, and John called them grapes. Leon remembered their sweet taste. However, it was currently off-season. Behind the bamboo door of the house was a young man with a handsome look swiftly writing something on parchment rolls using his quill and ink. Leon approached him. He tried to be soft on his steps, but those bronze-armored boots still produced a heavy noise on the wooden floor. "Ah, you're here." The young man put a period on the parchment and looked up at the visitor, his clear voice filled with friendly passion. "Anger. My dear brother. You sound as if you knew I would come." Leon smiled. Anger shrugged and grinned, "No. But this will make me more proactive." "You learned this from that old man too?" Anger shook his head. "No one needs to teach me that. Our father used to talk like this anyway." "So, if someone misinterprets your will and doesn't talk at all, how would you start the conversation then?" Leon raised an eyebrow. "I'll just stay silent and wait for it." "What if that man does the same?" Anger curled his lip. "That would be embarrassing. I think I'll turn to leave, lest I get embarrassed and continue whatever there is if he decides to stop me." Leon only smiled and nodded without giving any comment. He then looked around the room. "Where's good old John?" Hearing this, Anger frowned a little and showed a bit of worry. "You know, teacher's body is getting worse by the day, every part of him is wilting. His legs completely gave in the day before yesterday. He just applied his medicine and is now resting upstairs." Chapter 2, John the teacher. 20 years ago, Noah Pat, the brother's father, saved John who was in a near-death state outside of the manor. After John recovered from his wounds, the Viscount learned that the man had nowhere to go and decided to take him in, while offering him an easy and rewarding job, a fruit grower. What wounded him, why he collapsed outside the manor, and where he was from all remained mysteries. He never told anyone. He did say that he was from another planet. However, he never explained where this place called planet was. John was a gifted speaker, with brilliant growing and building techniques. The young brothers loved coming to him and hearing about all the wonderful stories. There were buildings that could pierce the clouds, metal machines that could fly, even gardens that existed on the moon. Leon was always intrigued by the lands in the stories and dreamed about going to these places when he grew up. When he did grow up, however, he realized that the stories were all made up. The feeling of having his dreams broken frustrated him very much, and ever since, he always felt a hint of anger and disdain in the face of Jonathan. Leon felt just the same about the fact that Anger trusted John, even considering him as his teacher. But no matter how Leon tried to persuade him, Anger always responded with a wordless smile. He never rejected or retorted. Anger had a very similar attitude to John's, gentle and calm on the outside, yet neither reason nor force could change his mind once he decided something. Leon picked up the parchment on the desk. It was covered by masses of thick characters which instantly made Leon's eyes thin. "Must you use these things taught by that old man instead of our universal language? No human alive can read them. Unless there's some kind of secret not intended for mankind." Leon muttered, then realized something. He looked at Anger with a wicked smile. "Oh dear brother, kindly explain to me, please. Are you recording your little adolescent troubles? Come on, tell me, big brother can help ya." Anger sighed and pointed at the parchment. "This is called Hanzi. They're used where teacher came from. As for their meaning, I'm writing about the records of the meanings about several physical constants calculated by teacher." Anger then pointed at some symbols beneath that looked like swimming tadpoles. "These are called Arabic numerals. They have the same use for measuring as the units we use in Goldspank Empire, but they're simpler and more distinctive. When you use them together with the constants I mentioned, you can record tons of stuff easily." Leon did not understand one bit of what Anger had been talking about, nor did he care. He only thought about how old John came up with more ways to hoodwink his brother, and how his adorable, innocent brother was getting brainwashed. The only bit of sympathy Leon had upon hearing the condition of John had disappeared. Leon waved a hand to stop Anger and took out a delicately wrapped letter from under his armor. "Just stop. I can't understand anyway and I don't really want to hear it. Here, an invitation from the city lord. My inheritance of father's title requires the notarization of the Lord and Marquis Merlin. We move out half a month later. Didn't you always want to go to Master Mede's solo concert? I'll take you to the Ocean Theater in Waterford when we're done with business so you can enjoy it." Anger took the invitation letter with joy on his face. He heard about the musician who was well known across the empire in Waterford. He produced excellent melodies and lyrics. Anger never had the chance to meet him, so of course he felt happy when his brother's official business could give him this chance. Looking at his younger brother trying to suppress all that joy and act tough, Leon couldn't help but rough up Anger's blonde hair. And of course, Anger glared back at him. "Don't do that again, I say. Hair is a man's pride and I'll not take any compromise in this." Ha ha ha. Leon was speechless for a second before he burst into laughter. "You're only 14 this year and hardly a man. Just a young lad who still needs growing." The brothers romped around. Naturally, Anger couldn't win against Leon, who was already burly as a tiger. In the end, Anger could only give his brother more stares, before returning to his homework assigned by Jonathan. Leon never knew how to deal with anger when he decided to keep to himself. Leon rubbed his nose and turned to leave. About half an hour had passed since Leon went away, and Anger finally swam ashore from the sea of numbers. Looking at the empty room, Anger knew that Leon left a while ago, and it was almost time for lunch. He opened the door and saw 2 lunch boxes placed on the stone table in the yard, as always. The head maid Mono was taking out the meals from the boxes. Vegetable stew sided with bread and fruit. Again. Anger felt a bit down upon seeing all this. He missed his teacher's cooking. Those simple fried rice never disappointed his appetite, as if there was magic in it. Anger never had the delicacy again ever since teacher started to grow weaker. He once tried to learn the cooking skill from John, but the result was horrible. Sigh. All 4 limbs of teacher had wilted beyond use now. I probably will never have those tastes again. Mono went upstairs to help John eat, while Anger sulked in depression. After finishing his meal, Anger entered the house just to see Mana coming down. "Auntie Mana. Is my teacher awake?" "Mr. John is awake, young master." Mana showed the empty porcelain bowl in her basket. "He's got a good appetite today, drinking all the soup." "Nice. I'll go see him." Watching Anger run upstairs in joy, Mana smiled in kindness. The 2 masters owned the Pat Manor now. On the outside, the elder master was proud and stern, while the younger one was gentle and calm. But outsiders didn't know that they were still children on the inside. No matter how they acted strong, they hid their softness, and only showed their spirit in front of their close servants, which should have been in their nature at such an age. "Teacher." Anger pushed open the attic door and saw the old man sprawling on the sling chair on the balcony, with his mute servant respectfully standing behind. The old man had sallow, shrunken skin. His whole appearance was drastically different from the locals, with obvious foreign features. His eyes were turbid, but those black pupils still stood out. Without his father, Anger had been considering John his most respected elder, and his lifelong mentor. Chapter 3, The Unaccustomed Time Traveler. "You're here," John said without turning his head. He just looked at the verdant woods in the distance. Hearing the similar words, Anger recalled what he said to his brother just a while ago and couldn't hold back his mild smile. "Yes, I'm here," Anger replied while pointing at the medicinal salve on the desk, then gave the mute servant a questioning look, who in turn shook his hands back at Anger. Anger sighed in distraught, took the salve and sat beside John. "Teacher, you disregarded the doctor's words again?" Anger screwed the glass bottle open and carefully applied the green-colored salve upon the wilted limbs of his teacher. "It does not matter anymore." John showed a trace of yearning and sorrow in his eyes. "I'm near my end now. It will not let me live." "What's it?" Anger suddenly surveyed the surroundings in alert. "Your enemy?" John stayed silent for a while, and shook his head. "There is no enemy here. My enemy is in another space." Anger asked the mute servant to go away unconsciously when he realized his teacher was going to talk about this other space. The servant wouldn't tell anyone about it, but Anger would do this every time, just in case. Even now, Anger couldn't even imagine where his teacher really came from. John was from another world, or another planet. He came from his home to this unfamiliar land because of an accident. After his transmigration, John was saved by Anger's father, and thus the story afterward. Originally, Anger did not believe this so-called transmigration. However, as John taught him more and more knowledge which shaped the concept of microcosm and macrocosm into his mind, Anger trusted it. The knowledge was all theoretical, but Anger already did his own calculation and realized how valuable the knowledge was. It was far more valuable than what the current education in Goldspank Empire could offer. He still had some doubt deep inside his mind, true, but he was already beginning to believe it. After making sure that the mute servant closed the door and walked downstairs, Anger asked in a whisper, "So, who was this it you mentioned?" John stayed silent again, then gave Anger an irrelevant question instead. "Do you believe that the world can have its own consciousness?" Anger was surprised and left speechless by the sudden question. He considered for a while before carefully giving out his answer. "You mean the Gaia's consciousness?" Of course, this was a non-existent topic in Goldspank Empire, and there was no Mother Earth Gaia in this world. The concept was from John, and Anger initially considered it as another mythology tale of the other world. He didn't expect it to be mentioned now. "Close," John nodded, albeit weakly. "I used to be a devoted believer of science. There were people talking about how the end of science is God, which I never trusted. However, ever since I came here, I felt something was slowly changing, and this includes the Gaia's consciousness." John looked at the flourishing mountain far away. "My body began to fail without apparent reason after I came to this world. I asked my parasitic ship to do a thorough examination. There weren't any pathological changes. In other words, I'm not ill. Anger knew what his teacher meant even though he was not sure what parasitic chip was. You're not ill, then why? Anger's doubt deepened further while looking at his teacher who was abnormally skinny now. John just got past his 50s, but nobody would question it if anyone said that he was already beyond his 80s or 90s. How did I come to this? John muttered to himself, and shook his head. I couldn't answer this question half a year ago. But since I'm half inside my grave now, it looks reassured, which allowed me to understand the source of my condition. Source? Anger looked at John, puzzled. Remember Gaia's consciousness I mentioned? My guess is this world has a giant, aggregated consciousness. It runs indifferently, with absolute fairness. It rejects all foreign souls. It is the consciousness of the world. As for my body, maybe it did this to me. John turned to look at Anger. To put it simply, my body is unaccustomed to this land, because I don't belong to this world. Inside the well-decorated hall, under the crystal-glazed chandelier, two figures sat on both sides of a long rectangular table. Both of them had several fully armored knights standing behind them. On the left was the next title successor of the Pat Manor, Leon Pat, wearing tightly knitted eyebrows. On the right sat a middle-aged man wearing silver armor, a big brown beard and obscured face, Eaton Morn. Count Eaton Morn, a member from the Morn family, the backbone of Goldspank Empire. A family that lived for centuries and famous for their bravery and combat skills. Currently, a great number of elite members of the family were fighting against the Halen Imperials on the front line. Nobody knew why Count Eaton suddenly decided to visit Gru Town. There was only silence. Knights on both sides stood against the presence of the other family, which became more overwhelming by the second. Naturally, the fierce and powerful knights from the Morn family quickly gained advantage over the ones from Pat Manor who never witnessed a fight. One of the Pat knights even lost grip of his sword because of the tension, which fell onto the floor with a loud clang. With this, Leon frowned again and could only speak first. My apologies. My knights don't really know the conventions. Leon waved a hand. His knights immediately saluted with a bend and took one step back. The simple gesture easily diffused the surging momentum of the Morns. Is Count Eaton's sudden visit about supplies for the front line? The Halen Imperial was not big, but most of their land were islands, scattered between the Grand Blue Ocean and the Storm Sea. Goldspank Empire didn't have much naval force, so they could only set up passive defenses along the shorelines against the invasion of Halen. When the defense dragged too long, fueled by the lack of fresh water near the sea, the responsibility of supplying food and water fell upon several towns and cities nearby. Gru Town was one of them. Here, the supply was taken care of by the Pat Manor alone, thus the townspeople usually did not know about this. As the owner of the Pat Manor though, Leon knew very well of his responsibility. Thanks to the Pat Manor, if not for you our vanguard camp would not make it through these months. Count Eaton showed his courtesy first, then abruptly changed the topic. There is nothing wrong with food and water supply. I came today to inquire about something. About? Leon raised an eyebrow. Eaton chuckled, which wasn't really clear behind the beard. However, Leon did not catch any hint of joy from Eaton's eyes. Viscount Pat, have you ever heard of the Morning Dew? Chapter 4, The Morning Dew. Morning Dew? Leon knew he heard about this name somewhere. But upon careful consideration, he couldn't recall what it was at all. Looking at how Leon was deep in thought for real, Eaton asked with a bit of surprise, so, Viscount Pat, you really don't know about it? No need to call me by that title yet, Count Eaton, since I haven't inherited it. Just call me Leon. He shook his head. And no, the name of Morning Dew does sound familiar, but I do not know what that refers to. Eaton gave Leon another thoughtful look and took a wooden box from his personal servant, then passed it to Leon. Do you know anything about this box? It was an exquisite wooden box with patterns carved on it which were quite different from those famous relief sculptures in the Empire. Simple outlines and sketches that resembled flowing clouds, a completely unique style compared to modern genres. Most people wouldn't recognize it. However, Leon just knew, this was old John's personal tea box. John's enemy came looking for him? This is a box for storing items maybe? Leon almost said this was a tea box, but he decided otherwise. He did not like the old man, but he wouldn't sell him out, just for the fact that his dear brother respected John very much. Leon was, however, still young. He tried to hide his expression, but Eaton still caught the split second of recognition. You don't know about the box? A voice of questioning sounded. No, Leon replied firmly. After another long moment of silence, Eaton curled the corner of his lips and showed a brief, yet ice-cold look. He said in a cold tone, well, since Viscount doesn't know about this, I'll not take any more of your time. Farewell. As Eaton and his men left the hall, Leon's expression slowly turned dark. He gave up too fast, and the killing intent he just showed. Leon got a very bad feeling about all this. Upon second thought, Leon ordered the domestic knights of the family to stay alert and hurried back to John's wooden house on his horse. He came to the place for a second time today, with a completely different mindset. His hurried movement caused the air to flow, which swayed the grass around in the yard. "Brother? Did something happen?" Anger recognized the unusual expression and did not play the "you're here" joke this time. He was anxious about whatever might make his brother act like this. "You saw the tea box? The one that told John uses to keep his tea leaves," Leon said while quickly moving to the second floor, then pushed open the door to John's bedroom. Anger followed behind. "Tea box?" From a small dresser nearby, he took out a small, round box with the figure of a dragon carved on it. "You mean this?" John was reading in front of his desk, with the mute servant helping him turn the pages, and now Leon had caught his attention. "Oh? You finally understand the awesomeness of my tea leaves and came to admire them, Leon boy." John smiled. There were also teas in Goldspank Empire, but they were very different from what John had been brewing. The teas in the Empire, specifically speaking, were beverages made from flowers, syrups and milk, like milk tea. Anger and Leon enjoyed this kind of tea. However, John rarely drank it. He consumed his handmade tea, brewed from the tea leaves picked from the green tea bushes he grew, without any additions. The tea garden he worked in was originally his own workplace when he was still strong enough. He asked head maid Mona to take care of it when he was no longer up for it. Leon ignored John's joke and took the box from Anger. Then he frowned and said, "No. No. The patterns. This box has snake monster on it. What I saw earlier was a box with sea waves or something similar." Leon tried to recall the box from Eton. "Snake monster? This is a dragon, brother." "Dragon? I never saw such slim dragons." Anger knew it would take forever to explain the different mythology conceptions of worlds to his brother, so he only said, "Teacher usually uses this dragon one to keep tea for himself. The one he gave mother for storing rose tea had peaches on it, and the one for father had bats. There are other boxes too. The one with wave patterns you just mentioned must be carved with clouds, also a gift for someone. So the old man uses such fashionable boxes?" "I never noticed," Leon said in surprise, but recovered soon and asked Anger again, "So, the cloud box? Where did it go?" Anger gave Leon a puzzled look. "Like I said, they're for gifting people. Teacher doesn't keep them here. Father once asked teacher to make a bunch of cloud boxes. If any of them are still here, they should be sitting in storage right now." "Leon, tell me, what happened?" It was Jonathan. He stayed silent most of the time, but he kept his watch on Leon's expression. Those eyebrows never loosened. Leon looked at John, inspecting him from head to toe, and slowly said, "Count Eaton of the Morn family came today." "Aha. Now Leon boy is worrying about my enemy coming for me?" John chuckled after hearing about Leon's experience today. "I'm not worried for you. I was trying to cover for you for Anger's sake." Leon turned away and muttered aloud. Anger laughed on the inside. He always saw his brother as the brave and strong male owner of the family, so he actually got a tiny bit of, what was it called, son dear? "Just tell me. What's your problem with Count Eaton?" He came and went away quickly. Particularly when going away, his look was malevolent. "If it's something that can be solved, I'll try my best. If not, you'll have to watch out for your own." "There's no problem," John replied without hesitation. "No problem? But that box he had was made by you." John looked at Leon. "In this world, everyone I know lives in Gru Town. And I don't see a reason why I would lie to you." John's body was already failing when he landed in this world, added by the fact that he hardly knew the language and culture here. He spent many years to blend in with the help of Viscount Pat. After getting used to the place, his limbs already began to wilt. He wasn't fit for long travels. The farthest place he ever went during the years was the capital of the Empire, because old Pat took him there to receive treatment. And he never expanded his relationship, let alone gaining enemies. Anger saw the doubt in his brother's expression and explained, "Teacher is right, maybe you thought wrong. Let's say, perhaps Count Eaton does not know about teacher in the first place." "You mean? You said that Count Eaton came for something. He first asked about the morning dew, maybe he's only after this." Anger tilted his head. This was what he always did when thinking about something. But the morning dew is just the name of a tea. So he came to drink tea? Something doesn't add up. Chapter 5, Rise of Transcendence. Morning dew. Leon knew he heard about it when Eaton spoke of it. So it was tea. As this part of his memory was awoken in his mind, Leon immediately recalled a series of facts about the morning dew. He tried it before. It was a type of tea with green leaves favored by Jonathan. The tea water made from the leaves also had a pale green tone, And when the needle-like leaves flowed up and down in the boiling water, they almost resembled dancing trees in a luxurious forest. As for the taste, Leon couldn't remember. Just bitter water maybe, because that was old John's favorite. Is there anything special about the morning dew? Leon asked Jonathan. There was only a tiny bit of doubt passing through John's eyes. Not really. It's only tea. You two drank it before, and so did your parents. However, if there truly is something worth mentioning, then maybe. Maybe? Leon quickly followed. John signaled the mute servant to go away first, before slowly speaking again. The seedlings of morning dew do not originate from this world. I took them here from another world. Leon rolled his eyes before John could finish. Yeah, right. Since Count Eaton came for the morning dew, not you, I'll send him an invitation later on to come to the manor tomorrow evening, to drink this tea. He had no intention to hear about John's other world theory or whatever. With that, Leon turned and left. John, on the other hand, gazed at the tea box in Anger's hands and fell into silence. Misty water vapor and smoke slowly rose. Anger bent over the crafting table, watching the leaves in the glass rise and fall in the flowing boiling water. The morning dew tea, nothing out of the ordinary could be seen on the outside. Personally, Anger preferred gulping down strong tea with a milk flavor to his heart's content. He felt exceptionally satisfied when licking away all the rich milk and residue of tea leaves from his lips, along with the lingering taste. John would joke about it, saying only kids love milk. To present his mature side in front of John, Anger only drank tea with bitterness and a taste of grass in it as long as there were people around him. He tried the morning dew countless times as well. Bitter at first, sweet when savored afterward. There was nothing particular about it though. So why did Count Eaton ask brother about it? Was he really doubting the origin of the seedlings like teacher mentioned? Anger thought about this for a while without reaching any answer, so he just gave up and turned to some files that were collected in his teacher's bookshelf. Most of the files were about knowledge of the Goldspank Empire and the surrounding nations. They included languages, cultures, history, characters, medicine, astrology and so on. Anger finished an epic about a heroic warrior on the sea. John had left a comment under the book: refined language, organized content, but far too many words of praise which could not be used to speculate possible historical facts. This can be a supplement to the historical materials of the Halen Imperials. John preferred research on physical data and biological forms in his early years. But later, he discovered that the physical constants represented by certain data did not obey the movement of the Earth. This was when he finally realized the distinctiveness of this world. In his recent years, he focused more on organizing and researching literary historical data instead. There seemed to be no historian or similar posts in Goldspank Empire or the surrounding nations, thus the historical data arranged by John over the decade was one of a kind. Anger was also very much interested in the newly arranged data, so he was greatly focused when reading it. After finishing the history book, Anger saw the tip of the next parchment, with John's comment written in Hanzi: most residents in this world are unlettered, and it seems there's no universal knowledge yet. People in ancient China already knew the concept of round sky and square earth when addressing the macro environment they live in. It was incorrect, but it was a basic understanding about their planet. However, people in this world are only aware of their nations and countries, without the knowledge of anything beyond. I hope I can find the name of this world in some other files. Or give it a name, if I can't find one. After that, John started writing about the universal senses of worth of the people in this world. As a local, Anger knew well about this data, so he rushed through it and grabbed another parchment. A guide to the applicability of Chinese medicine and Western medicine in this world, completely written in Chinese Hanzi. Perhaps John and Anger were the only ones that could understand it in this entire world. Dusk arrived unknowingly. The servant already lit a fire in the fireplace. Another gentle evening filled with warm firelight, cricket buzzes and the calls of crows from outside. Looking in another direction, on the plains not far from Gru Town, rows of temporary tents sat around bright campfires. One giant, beautifully decorated black tent with golden edges in the center was exceptionally eye-catching, like a moon protected by a swarm of stars. This place was a temporary camp for Eaton Morn, although that black tent was not Eaton's. Cold wind in the month of the freezing earth howled. Without trees, the armored knights could not suppress their trembling. Count Eaton noticed this and ordered a pair of garrison knights to patrol, while letting everyone else rest near the campfire. When everything was settled, Count Eaton slowly walked into the elegant black tent. The moment he entered it, he replaced his stern expression when giving orders with a look of respect and ingratiation. There weren't many decorations inside the tent, though everything carried a trace of wonder. An old man wearing black robe and white beard sat in a corner, quickly writing something. A crystal ball was ominously floating beside him. There seemed to be shifting mist inside the crystal ball. The old man would check it every now and then, before returning to his writing. Eden looked at the crystal ball only to feel faint all of a sudden, so he quickly looked away. You found the morning dew? A deep, hoarse voice came from the old man. With a hint of fear, Eden told him about the conversation between himself and Leon Pat today, to the last detail. Oh? The old man put down his quill and blew the crimson-colored ink on the paper dry. So he didn't know about the morning dew, but his expression shifted when he saw the wooden box? Maybe there's something about the crafter of the box. Or rather, he or she is a caster, too. Eden carefully glanced at the patterns drawn on the paper. The crimson streaks formed waves, with strange lines and symbols intertwined within. His eyes instantly felt sore. The magic formula on this scroll is called Surging Waves. It will help your battle against Halen. The old man paused a little. It's a pity that you aren't a talented one, otherwise I could take you away from the old earth using this chance. Eden's expression fell dark. Father, I'm okay if you just take Brother Alan and sister. As for me, I can stay with the family. The old man sighed in frustration. As he recalled his two grandsons, his expression became soft again. The talent of wizardry is extremely rare throughout history. People couldn't find a single one among tens of thousands of people in some places. It's already God's blessing for our family to witness two talents in succession. Alan and Aline are my grandson and granddaughter, so of course I'll look after them as best as I can. Too bad my talent is not outstanding. Soon, I'll have to rely on them. With that, the old man turned his gaze back onto the wooden box on the desk. Interesting carvings, but I sense no magical traces. It's probably just an ordinary craftsman. The old man shook his head. It was impossible to find a caster on the old earth. Even element waves were completely constrained here. Occultist wizards and bloodline wizards who did not rely on elements could not find any materials they needed here. This land was forsaken after all. Since that Leon wouldn't speak the truth, I'll make him. Eden bowed with one fist folded against the other hand and a trace of cruelty in his eyes. Nothing is more important than Father's breakthrough. I'll ask Maul to take 2 rider formations and burn the Pat Manor to the ground tonight. The old man didn't reply, which meant he silently agreed. He was a white wizard, someone who would not slaughter ordinary folks for no reason. However, as this was about his own breakthrough, some bloodshed wouldn't hurt. Besides, the white wizards are good wizards statement was a joke. White wizards and black wizards had different standings only because of the different natures of the spells they wielded. They were the same when it came to the ideas of human value. They both tended to avoid unnecessary killing, though. After discussing some matters after Alan and Aline left, Eden bid farewell to his father and prepared to leave. This was when the Knight Commander Maul came and knelt in front of the tent, seeking an audience. Report for the Count. Just a while ago, Viscount Leon of the Pat Manor sent a messenger here, offering a letter of invitation. Chapter 6, John's past father. Leon Pat invited us to the manor to enjoy tea together. Eden read through the letter. Doubt filled his eyes. The old man wearing white beard was also stunned by the invitation a little, but he recovered soon and chuckled. It looks like this family will live yet another night. Eden hesitated. He knew Father did not intend to assault the Pat Manor for now, so he followed with a smile. The man's smart enough. Why the sudden change of mind though? The old man smiled again and pointed at the wooden box. Because of this, perhaps. The color of night gradually went away. The Pat Manor did not face a bloody night. The sun rose again and covered every inch of land within the manor with its warmth, as usual. No one in the manor knew that they just barely escaped a terrible fate. In the early morning, Anger brought several maids to the tea garden to pick the freshest leaves. It was an unforgiving winter outside when everything would freeze solid, but the tea garden sheltered by the greenhouse which was improved by John was still as warm as it was in the spring. To prepare for the tea party this evening, Anger ordered the maids to collect lots of morning dew leaves. Part of them would be used to brew tea for the evening, the rest of them would be handed to Mana who would stir-fry the leaves. Only tea leaves that were killed needed in high temperature could retain their original fragrance for a long time. Anger planned to give these preserved leaves to Count Eden as gift. Seeing how the maids had brought the leaves for Da and Zimming, Anger could finally entrust the job to them. He then returned to the yard of the stilt house. John was sitting on the balcony of the second floor, bathing in the warm sunlight, which was quite scarce during the winter. He was even humming a tune. Anger walked up, took the salve from the mute servant, and began rubbing it onto John's body. John only glanced at him without saying anything. John already explained the cause for his wilting limbs, and Anger probably didn't believe it. No matter, John would just enjoy this act of respect from his pupil. He wouldn't be doing this for long anyway. John didn't even know whether he could make it past the month of freezing earth. John welcomed the gentle wind blowing against him with a smile, while humming his nameless melody. Sad. Yet free. More importantly, remembrance. If I can travel back to Earth. Even if for just a second before I have to die, I'd accept it. John never really understood why people would revert to their origins until just now. Sorrow was written all over Anger's face. But he did not know how to comfort his teacher. To part with someone was always the most hurtful experience, not to mention to part with someone a world away. The moment of tranquility did not last long. John suddenly pointed to a transparent, crystalline object which had been half buried in a flower pot on the balcony. "Can you pass that to me?" With an Anger went there and dug up the object out of the wet dirt, rubbed it clean with his handkerchief before giving it to Jonathan. The object had an oval shape, like a glazed sphere when observed from afar. John held the glazed sphere in his hand and watched for a long time. His expression changed from resentment, to sorrow, then to a bitter smile. "I dropped this in the forest 3 years ago, and it somehow ended up inside my flower pot." John shook his head. Maybe this is fate? Hearing his teacher speaking to himself, Anger blushed and stuttered. "I brought it back. You always appreciated it, sometimes you even cried over it, so I believed this was from your family. When I saw you throwing it away in the forest, I thought you no longer wanted to remember someone. Then I picked it up and hid it here, so you can still find it in case you change your mind." John was left speechless for a while, then he muttered again, albeit in a voice only he could hear this time, "Or perhaps the fate lies with you?" After staying silent for a moment longer, John looked at Anger. "The glazed sphere wasn't from my family, though it could be considered something from Earth. I don't know about its exact origin. Let me tell you a story about the sphere." As John slowly revealed his story, more and more shock climbed onto Anger's face. He thought it was only a sphere with some memorable meaning behind it, not something with such an amazing backstory. The story started 20 years ago, when John was still back on Earth. He was a scientist, born in the land of China. To work on a grand and mysterious project, he accepted an invitation and brought his wife and daughter to Long Island in New York, USA. It was a secret research project which lasted longer than a decade. The research project was called the Montauk Project. It was a famous space physics project back on Earth. John was born in the middle of the 23rd century. The project commenced 2 centuries ago by then, and was cast aside several times with a total of 50 years devoted into it. John participated in the 6th commencement. The project was formerly the Philadelphia experiment in the year of 1942, when radar was just invented. To render their warships undetectable by radar beams, the American military carried out the experiment on the destroyer escort, USS Eldridge. There was an omnidirectional antenna on the main mast and 2 energy coils on the deck, all of which were powered by a generator on the ship. Abnormality arose at the beginning of the experiment, and worse disasters came about during the 2nd and 3rd attempt. The generator went out of control. Eldridge disappeared from everyone's sight and instantly reappeared somewhere 7,000 kilometers away. The Philadelphia experiment was forced to shut down in the end, but people had discovered a side product, long-distance teleportation. In simple words, the Montauk Project was a physics research subject focusing on traveling through space. At first, the research of the Montauk Project were all limited by the concepts of the Philadelphia experiment, and did not yield much progress, until the beginning of the 23rd century when an alien object sowed great excitement into the hearts of all scientists. The alien object fell into the southwest region of the Sahara Desert in Africa, right in the middle of the famous Eye of the Sahara. The object attracted the attention of every country and region. As a small nation in Africa, Mauritania couldn't even hope to compete for the object against the others. In the end, the object went to Long Island in New York, USA, while being researched by several nations including China, Britain, France, Japan, Russia and so on. People named it the Alien Eye. During the research, scientists found out that the Alien Eye possessed energy readings that contradicted most existing physical coefficients. If triggered by high-energy radiation of a certain wavelength, the Alien Eye could even teleport objects within a small area. Because of this newly discovered teleportation method, the scientists commenced the Montauk Project for the 6th time. John was only an ordinary researcher during the project. His job was to keep a record of the effect on plants, inflicted by the wave frequencies generated by the Alien Eye. One day, John brought several sealed saplings into the heavily protected Alien Eye research zone to record samples, as usual. Nothing was out of the ordinary at first. Most plants withered and died under the waves released by the Alien Eye, except for one single tea seedling brought from China. As John held the seedling and activated his parasitic chip to begin recording, something went wrong with either the control panel or some other component, no one knew. Several flashes of high-energy beams hit the Alien Eye spot on, followed by drastic changes in the laboratory. Space collapsed, and darkness emerged. The Alien Eye emitted a terrifying aura, covering everything within the lab in an instant. The next second, before John could realize what was going on, he was swallowed into the darkness, with the seedling still in his hand. Breaking past several dimensional barriers, John landed in this world, with the alien eye by his side and countless wounds upon his body. He was then saved by old Viscount Pat. The alien eye, on the other hand, lost its magic and became a most ordinary object, a glazed sphere. Chapter 7, The Tea Party. So this glazed sphere with a pale blue hue was the reason why John came here from Earth. Apart from being amazed, Anger also felt curious and confused. It was only natural that he felt this way when facing such an extraordinary artifact. His teacher wouldn't be in this situation if not for this. He would be enjoying his life back with his wife and daughter. Apart from this though, there was a voice, secretly whispering into Anger's mind. The glazed sphere was also the reason why he could meet an erudite figure like teacher in the first place. Without teacher, maybe he would have become a spoiled playboy who would live a boring life forever, never to know about anything in this world. Of course, John couldn't read Anger's mind. He only fiddled around with the sphere in his palm, then stretched out his mostly wilted hand to put the sphere into Anger's. I already threw it away, and I'll keep it that way. Since you brought it back, it's probably destined to be with you. Keep the alien eye. I don't have much time left, but you're still young. Maybe you will find a chance to visit the Earth. John shook his head with a smile. He didn't even believe himself, yet he still insisted. If you truly did, please bring my ashes back to China and bury them under that old mistletoe tree in my home, just along the lower reaches of Yangtze River. The mist was thick this evening. Anger held his chin and stayed beside John until the old man was asleep. Then, Anger left while rubbing his sore arms. Teacher's body was constantly failing, and nobody knew how long before he would. Despite Anger's will, if teacher said that Gaia's consciousness would not spare him, then there was nothing Anger could do. Well, maybe just one, he would stay at teacher's side, happily, and fulfill his duty as a pupil and child during John's last moment. When Anger stepped out of the yard, the moonlight was shining upon the earth. He was wearing a down cape with his family emblem embroidered on it, over his thin coat. His shadow dragged long under the moon. His lonely figure trod towards the castle in the center of the manor. In the hall of the castle, a team of female dancers wearing elegant attires held the tips of their dresses and circled around to the musician's melody. The maids lit the valuable candles made from Dipsy fish oil one by one, illuminating the hall with artificial daylight. Tasty smells filled the hall: wine, cream cheese, and the mild sweetness of flowers and tea. This joyful scene was what Anger saw when he entered the castle. Leon was standing in the middle of a crowd, with his glass of red wine in hand, talking to several strangers cheerfully. Those must be the people from the Morn family. As Anger quietly inspected the visitors, Leon saw him and happily dragged him into the crowd for introduction. The one standing in the front was a middle-aged man wearing a gentlemanly costume. He had verdant green eyes, deep brown hair, and distinctive facial features with a sharp look like an unsheathed sword. Just in time, Anger. This is Count Eaton from the Morn family, who's been defending the front lines, Leon introduced. Anger greeted him in a natural manner. The etiquette for nobles was already carved deep inside him, and he performed perfectly like a noble. These are Alan and Aline, son and daughter of Count Eaton. Alan was about the age of 14, similar to Anger himself. His facial features hadn't fully grown, and his chubby look was quite adorable. He inherited his father's green eyes and brown hair, although the hairs had unfettered twists and curls in them, giving the boy a childish look. Despite being the younger sister, Aline looked more mature than Alan. She already had feminine curves around her body, accompanied by the long, elegant noble dress. She appeared like a little princess who was just about to step into adulthood, carrying the particular attractiveness of a young woman. At the same time, everyone else was measuring Anger as well. Anger was a beautiful boy by Empire standard, blonde hair, blue eyes, clean, white, yet healthy skin. Every part on his face was perfect, and they were only more outstanding when put together. The flawless look already had an effect. When Anger smiled towards the brother and sister out of courtesy, Aline immediately blushed and hid herself behind Alan, pretending to be fetching a dish. The little cutie. Eden silently laughed. Nevertheless, he was a bit surprised by Anger's appearance. Old Pat had a really plain look, yet he gave birth to two handsome sons, between whom he really couldn't pick a winner. After many words of praise, Leon noticed that Eaton kept glancing in another direction, so he said, "This is a tea party after all, so enough of the wine. Let's enjoy some tea." With that, Leon clapped his hands to stop the dancers and led everyone to their respective seats in the tea room. Suddenly, the gate of the hall clicked and was slowly pushed open. It was raining outside, and this was when everyone finally realized the weather. A mysterious figure cloaked under a black robe slowly walked inside. Leon frowned. "I'm sorry, you are." Before he could finish, Count Eaton, Alan and Aline rushed to the figure's side with respect. "Viscount Pat, this is my father, Marmorn," Eaton introduced. "Father loves teas with weak tastes." He came with us when he heard that a specialty was to be served. He was occupied by something along the road, that's why he just arrived. Leon acknowledged with a no, then walked up and greeted the elder member of the Morn family with even greater passion. Anger, however, kept his focus on Mars' shoes and twitched his eyebrows. Those were soft chamois leather shoes, with wet dirt hanging around the edges. What attracted Anger was the faint red color of the dirt. Most dirt in Gru Town was yellow loess or black soil. There was only one place where red dirt could be found within an area of 50 kilometers. The Pat's Tea Garden. This man was so interested in the tea garden that he even went there in the rain. Mara must be the one asking about the morning dew, though Anger still didn't know what was so special about the tea. It was bitter, and followed by a tiny bit of sweetness long afterward. Mara was the only one showing interest in it apart from teacher. Anger did not tell this to anyone. He only showed a somewhat stiff expression. The Morns were way too powerful, and his own little countryside noble family would have zero chance against them. He could only hope that today's tea party would satisfy them. With hood removed, Mara just looked like an ordinary old man. Long, white beard, squinted eyes because of his smile, and a trace of elderly benevolence. Leon ordered head-maid Mara to serve all the pastries prepared today. Beside them sat several delicate porcelain teapots with carvings on them. These teapots hold every type of tea grown in our manor. As Leon introduced the teas, Mana opened their respective lids. When the first pot was opened, light vapor rose up, bringing a rich, fragrant smell of flowers. This is icy honeydew. The leaves were the petals of honeymoon trees unique to the Pat Manor. This was brewed using the melted snow on the snow mountain instead of milk. Sweet but not too sweet. It sends a chill into your brain, Leon sighed. It's a pity that a long winter has come. It should make you feel comfortable during the intense summer. The Morns gave it a taste. Aline was the only one who actually liked it and drank some more, while all the others only had a tiny sip, except for Mara though, who only smelled it before putting it aside. The second pot contained milk tea. This one had a more distinctive taste which was quite different from the famous teas around the empire. This is called the lemon milk tea, brewed from a sour fruit called the summer lemon, added with some mint leaves. Then he pointed at Anger. It's my brother's favorite. He drinks several glasses every day, while trying to hide it from everyone. Ha! Anger glared at Leon with his mind, but kept his smile on the outside. Mr. Pat likes it? Aline beamed with delight, took a porcelain cup from Mana and took a big gulp. Milk skin lingered on her lip. Aline closed her eyes and pondered over the sweet yet sour aftertaste of milk. Brilliant. This is nice. Aline commented aloud, I like it better than that flower tea. Hearing this, Alan also took a cup and downed it in one go. He smacked his lips, eyes squinted into slits, and nodded in satisfaction. He agreed with his sister's taste, aloud. Count Teton looked at his children and only chuckled. He didn't drink the milk tea, for he already caught the meaning hidden between Leon's words. This tea was obviously meant for Alan and Aline. It seemed that Mara also had a deep love for his grandchildren. He pushed his share of milk tea straight in front of Aline. Next, Mana opened several pots in succession. Most of them had milk teas and flower teas in them, about which Mara didn't care much. He only sipped 2 types of green teas which were also favored by Jonathan, though he was still somewhat indifferent about them. Anger cast his eyes on the last teapot, which held the last of the 3 teas most loved by John, and the only tea plant he brought from the earth, the morning dew. Chapter 8, Mara's opportunity. When Mana opened the lid of the last teapot, there was no smell, no vapor, nothing. However, the look of these most ordinary tea leaves made Mara stand up suddenly and gaze at the greenish-yellow liquid with great excitement in his eyes. The excitement was true. He wasn't pretending. Mara looked at the liquid inside the cup in his hand. He never noticed that his sudden movement already knocked over his chair. Anger's doubt reached its peak at this moment. Why did Mara react like that towards the morning dew? Did he discover that it was from another world? As Anger asked the questions in his mind, Mara slowly drank his morning dew tea from the cup, with great care and solemnity. Mara's action was so solemn that it almost created an aura, calming all conversations in the once lively room. Leon wanted to speak, but something convinced him to stay silent. This did not last long though, as when Mara closed his eyes to admire the great aftertaste of the tea, another unspeakable aura emerged from his body. The intense aura surprised everyone, before they all realized that they could no longer make any sound. No matter how hard they tried, nothing would come out. It appeared as if they had entered a world where sound itself was forbidden. This was not all. Something even more terrifying followed. Mara opened his eyes abruptly, took out a crystal ball from under his robe and fixed it in the air. He then mumbled something, and with a flash of light and several more seconds, the people around him realized that they couldn't even move now. My spirit is about to break through its limitation with the help of this lesser magical plant. To prevent any accidents during my breakthrough, I have applied a charm of binding and a ward of silence around all of you. I will lift them once my breakthrough is done." Mara's voice was deep and gruff. The end of his tone also carried a strange accent. With that, Mara no longer paid any attention to anyone's reaction and closed his eyes, while the crystal ball circled around him. Among the bound individuals, Count Eaton and those from the Morn family felt discomfort at first, but they recovered soon enough. However, Anger and Leon were panicking. The brothers had never experienced anything supernatural from the moment they were born. They always believed that the world they saw was the world there always was. But tonight, Mara's marvelous magic completely broke the conception of world they had learned about. It all happened so fast that the unprepared brothers couldn't possibly just accept it and stay calm. The binding charm could stop their movement, and the ward of silence could mute them, but neither could confine their minds. After the initial panic inside the ward of silence, Anger slowly gained his calm back. His enlarged pupils also went back to normal. When he looked at Aline, who had been sitting across him, she presented him with a comforting smile which could be interpreted as a "don't worry." Anger was taken aback for a brief second, but he soon returned his own smile, unconsciously. And now Aline was blushing all over, with her eyes shifting about everywhere, not sure where to look. Anger didn't think too much of it. He thought Aline was only feeling embarrassed because someone was staring at her, so he simply copied Count Eaton's reaction. He closed his eyes to relax. What was it that teacher mentioned in his tales? Magic? Spells? Conjuring? Or some kind of sleight of hand? But they were all made up. Does this mean they are actually real? Many questions roamed around Anger's mind. He could not disregard them, but he couldn't get any answer. He recalled some of the historical materials arranged by teacher, about Goldspank Empire and the other nations nearby. Some of the descriptions contained fantasies, such as how a fire-breathing dragon appeared in the Moisen Canyon near the edge of the empire 800 years ago. The dragon posed great threat to the civilians nearby, so the emperor summoned warriors around the world to slay it. Numerous fighters, soldiers and knights responded to the call and marched into the canyon. However, everyone was burnt to ash by the dragon fire before they could even get close. The dragon-slaying war lasted several years and witnessed hundreds and thousands of dead or heavily wounded warriors. Yet the dragon did not suffer even a scratch. Before the emperor decided to seal the entire area centered around the dragon's lair, an elder wearing white robe floated above the Moisen Canyon by chance. He gently flickered the wand he was holding, and the dragon was easily pulled into an unknown space. Afterward, the elder floated away without leaving a word. In the historical record, the dragon-slaying war began in a great tragedy, and ended in absolute absurdity. John's comment towards this part of record was, the conqueror merely designed a myth to calm his subjects. This was Anger's idea about the story as well. But now, doubts appeared in his mind. Could that elder in white robes be just like Mara, someone who could wield amazing power? Also, the records about Halen Imperial mention such stories many times, like how the goddess of sea bestowed fortune upon the islanders, or how mermaids seduced sailors and destroyed an entire fleet. The history of many other nations also involved traces of mythology. Were they really all fabricated? The scale in Anger's mind began to tip. It did not take very long for Mara to break through. The small quartz hourglass only flipped once. If measured using the unit of time on Earth, it was about 30 minutes. The protective crystal ball slowly stopped circulating around Mara and began to float in place. Now, Mara's expression was filled with joy. Of course he would be joyful, he was stuck at intermediate apprentice for 20 years. He thought he would never break into high apprentice in his life, so he gave up in frustration and took the job to find talented students in the old Earth. He still remembered his own expression, a most bitter smile, upon taking the job. Looking for talents? There were rarely any talents even in the Prime Plane. How was it possible to find any in Old Earth? He stepped onto the vessel towards Old Earth with great depression. Only thorns and despair could be awaiting him ahead. But the gods had mercy. He never expected to run into such a big, pleasant surprise on this dull journey. First, he discovered 2 talents, and they happened to be his grandchildren. He satisfied his mission twofold, and once Alan and Aline grew stronger, they could even help him in return. Besides, he found out about an unknown lesser magic plant in Old Earth. At the front line, he bought a morning dew tea from a traveling merchant, and that was when he realized the tea was almost on par with the white orchid potion. The white orchid potion was the only one among lesser potions that could help with someone's breakthrough, so it always cost a fortune. He diligently hunted for quests for many years just to win himself a bottle of it. But now, he discovered the morning dew in Old Earth. Too bad that the morning dew tea from the merchant had been laid aside for too long, which greatly hindered its effect. After inquiring about the source of the tea, they hurried to Grutown on their horses without stopping. This was what they called destiny. After his successful breakthrough, Mara finally understood why wizard apprentices tended to roam about deadly ruins, for even a wee bit of destiny could help them advance. Chapter 10. Expelled. Deceit. Anger led Mara to the stilt house where his teacher was. Mr. Mara, my teacher must be resting inside. Please wait here so I can go in and inform him. Mara nodded and watched Anger go upstairs first. This is a peculiar house. Never thought I could run into such structures in old Earth, Mara silently commented on the appearance of the stilt house. He witnessed many buildings with strange shapes in the Fey continent. This house showed great ingenuity, true, but it was a work of mortals after all. He praised its craftsmanship just because a mortal could build such an amazing sight. Unlike Mara, who was only merely interested in the house, Alan and Aline could not hold back their curiosity and circled around the house in wonder. They even went under the rain to observe John's vegetables and fruits near the wine rack. They were still young. Trying to pretend to be mature did not help in concealing the childishness they occasionally showed. This pure innocence made everyone around them smile. Seeing how they were so interested in the grape trellis, Leon took out 2 bottles of red wine which had been preserved in the cellar for 2 years and offered everyone a glass. The wine was rich and fragrant. As for drinking companions, Leon and Eaton began chatting about the front line. Eaton would like to get rid of the silent awkwardness too, so he happily chimed in with Leon and joined in a leisurely atmosphere. After getting away from them, Anger came to the 2nd floor and woke up the mute servant. He helped his teacher get dressed, then sent the servant away and told John why he came. With his night's sleep interrupted, John felt hazy for a moment, until he suddenly rose with a start when Anger mentioned wizard. Wizard? You met a wizard? John grasped Anger's sleeve as he exclaimed in disbelief. Yes. A level 3 apprentice wizard, to be exact. At least Mara just called himself that. Confusion and curiosity appeared in John's expression briefly. He then mumbled in enlightenment, "This is it. This is it. Everything is explained now. Wizards, wizards. This is why many physics formulas I researched on all these years couldn't be used here. I was wrong from the very beginning. This is not an ordinary world, there are supernatural powers here. Ha. I always believed that I was superior to the locals here because of my vision. God, I was the one trapped inside my pitiful vision, talk about digging myself into a pit," yelled John while looking out of the window with a blank stare. Those yells carried a strong emotion, unwillingness and repentance. Everyone else staying in the hall on the 1st floor also heard this. Mara carefully listened to the regretful self-mockery and questioned, "What's the meaning of that? It's not our universal language, is it?" Anger never told him any details about John, his origins, or the fact that the morning dew was grown by him. Thus, Mara thought that this man called John was just a civilian of the Empire. That was his home tongue. His home was called China? "I don't know much about it," said Leon. He was just as confused. China? Mara searched his memory and did not find any place by that name. A small far-off country in some remote corner of the world maybe? He did not pursue the details any further. He was curious about the great emotion carried by the roar, but as an apprentice wizard, he was curious about lots of matters. It was not worth the precious time thinking about the problems of common folks. Besides, he just became a high apprentice. All he was thinking about now was to solve Anger's little problem as fast as possible, leave this place, and get back to the academy for further studies. Nothing was more important than his own improvement in strength. With that goal set in mind, Mara just closed his eyes and began to meditate. It did not take very long. Anger soon came back down with John, who had recovered his usual temperament. John did not ask Anger for support. Before his legs became wilted, he designed a wheelchair himself which could help him climb the stairs with the help of additional wheels and springs. As Leon explained this tool, Mara quietly thought. A true talent in mechanics. He would have made great achievements in the path of alchemy. What a pity that such talent wouldn't be helping him now, as he's just too aged. The first impression Mara had on John was fixed on one word, aged. Mara himself was approaching the age of 80 now. He was not a formal wizard, so he could only watch as time left its traces on him. He tried a number of means of recuperation though, so he currently appeared as someone who had just gotten past 60. As for John, if Anger had not already told him that John was only beyond 50, Mara would believe the man in front of him was well above the age of 100. Pathology on the flesh? Failed blood flow? Or did someone put a curse on him that could quicken his aging? By mentioning the big trouble, Anger hoped that Mara could cure his teacher. This was why Mara's first attempt was to try to ascertain the nature of John's condition. However, Mara frowned as John approached him. He felt strange, as though something very wrong was coming from John's body. He knew about this feeling. When he saw those otherworldly slaves captured by wizards back at the Crimson Auction, he had felt something similar, as if what he saw did not belong to this world. This man was a visitor from another plane. Mara frowned harder. Speaking of visitors from another plane, John did not really seem like one. Mara recalled reading a book from the library in the academy, Pros and Cons of Expeditions Against Foreign Planes, written by the Great Twisted Wizard, Barzil. The book clearly explained that although there were sapient creatures in the other planes, no one had ever discovered identical humans out there. There were, however, many creatures that looked like humans, the ones with 3 eyes, the ones with fish scales behind their ears, those as small as bombs, winged ones. They looked similar to mankind, but people only gave them a common name, the humanoids. Maybe this man is a humanoid from another plane? Thought Mara as he took a guess in his mind. However, he kept his kind smile on the outside. If this was true, he could just capture John and sell him to the wizards, which would win him at least 10 magic crystals. Mara worked day and night for all these years, yet he only saved up a little less than 100 of them. With that in mind, Mara's smile grew so big that his eyes were only thin slits again. When John sat down before him, Mara cleared his throat and explained, "First, I need to use a detect disease on you. Once I find the right approach, there should be no problem in treating you." Mara did not even wait for John and Anger's reply before he simply summoned his crystal ball and began mumbling something. Soon, a pale green aura emerged from the crystal ball and slowly covered John's body. The amazement John felt upon witnessing such miracle gradually calmed down under the gentle touch of the aura, and his face regained its vigorous color. In the end, John closed his eyes and fell into a deep slumber. Everyone else wondered about Mara's method. They only thought that Mara was casting a cure. No one was aware that what Mara used was not the level 1 cantrip, Detect Disease, but a level 2 cantrip that only level 2 apprentice wizards could barely manage to cast, Expel Deceit. This was a support cantrip which could be used to help someone see through illusions or deceits. The spells could not be defined by a simple explanation. For example, grease was used to obstruct people's steps, but with a little tweak, it could also facilitate burning fire. Every spell had infinite possibilities. The fact that wizards pursue truth was essentially a process in which they made infinite possibilities into infinite absoluteness. This was also true for the Expel Deceit spell. With a little change, it could be directed onto another target in order to ascertain that target's original race. However, there was a prerequisite for this method to work: the target must accept it. If he or she held any will to resist, the cantrip would fail. Now, Mara was pretending to be helping John as a cover-up. John would of course not resist him. The green aura persisted for half a minute. It first covered John's head, and slowly moved down to his feet, like a scanning process. When everything was finished, the aura returned to the crystal ball. With a shift of his eyes, Mara silently injected his spirit power into the crystal ball to read the result of the Expel Deceit spell. Human. 100%, absolutely pure human. Of course, Mara secretly reassured himself about the result. However, he still had a tiny bit of doubt, for he had trusted his instinct earlier. Yet he could not reach a reasonable conclusion after quite some thinking, so he could only choose to believe the result of the spell. John was human, he should not worry too much about helping him. Since John was not another worldly creature, Mara lifted his misgiving and began to fulfill his promise to Anger. He waved his crystal ball again, and quietly constructed a new cantrip pattern using his magic. This time, he was constructing a real Detect Disease spell. Chapter 11, The Other Trouble. Anger watched on as Mara performed his spell. He believed that the great wizard would save his teacher without a doubt. Leon looked at Anger with kindness. He somewhat complained that his brother had wasted this great chance on John, but when he thought about those contributions John made towards the Pat family, those regrets simply went away. As long as his little brother was happy, this was worth it. They had different mindsets, but they all believed that John's chronic illness could be dealt with. However, realism always escaped expectations. When the green aura disappeared from John, Anger quickly stepped up to ask Mara about the situation. However, Leon stopped him. Mara was already raising his crystal ball again, but his once relaxed expression had changed into a grim and doubtful one. Even the great wizard could not help teacher? So teacher became like this because the Gaia's consciousness was rejecting someone from another world after all? No. It cannot be. Anger's surging hope began to sway. After a while, Mara stopped his casting. He could not understand. He did not find any illness on John's body, and the result of the spell also told him that everything was fine. Everything was fine? That right there was the biggest problem. Anyone with eyes could see John's emaciated figure. Only someone that was sick beyond hope could be like this. John was only 50, so such an aged body was undoubtedly abnormal. Still, he could not find anything unusual. Maybe he was cursed by some evil wraith? With that in mind, Mara spread his spirit power towards Jonathan. Any traces of abnormalities could be easily captured in this way. No. Nothing. Again. Mara was completely stumped this time. He broke through into High Apprentice merely a moment ago and had not begun to learn about level 3 cantrips. He used everything he knew about detecting illness and none of them worked on Jonathan. He no longer knew what to do. Mara glanced at Anger, whose expression was filled with worry now, and he felt a bit embarrassing. He had already made his promise like a big shot, but now the truth was showing otherwise. He cleared his throat and gave Anger an apologetic look. "I'm afraid I don't have the means to cure your teacher at the moment. I've done my inspection. There's nothing wrong with his body, and that means I can't do anything on that matter," Mara explained. He then changed the subject, however. "He does seem seriously ill, so there might be a problem about his spirit or his soul." Anger recalled what his teacher told him before. John's body was fine, the wilting of his organs was because of the Gaia's consciousness. Mara did not say anything about the Gaia's consciousness, but he did mention that John's body was good. So it must be his spirit or soul then? The Gaia's consciousness was harming teacher's soul? Mara did not realize that his words, added with Anger's own cogitation, had created a similar conclusion. Correct or not, Anger already believed it in some way. Then, a problem with the soul or spirit cannot be cured? Asked Anger with a worried tone. "There are ways. But I cannot do that as of now," answered Mara. He sighed helplessly. "I might help him if I'm to become a real wizard, but as an apprentice, there's nothing I can do." "So, a true wizard can cure my teacher?" Anger persisted. "I cannot take mindless guesses on what the great wizards can do, but saving a common man shouldn't be a problem. Even if he's dead, the great wizards can save his soul from the eternal darkness." When will Mr. Mara become a true wizard?" Mara was surprised by this question. He then shook his head with a bitter smile. "It took me nearly 60 years to become a level 3 apprentice wizard. A real wizard? Not in my life, I'm afraid. That's not something you can achieve with the pass of time." Mara gave Anger a brief explanation about the states for wizards. One's talent determined how fast he or she could become a wizard. Once that happened, talent would no longer play an important part. However, talent was extremely critical as long as one had not become a formal wizard. Someone could do it with a few years of training, while others could train for their entire lives without going beyond level 1 apprentice. This was the difference caused by talent and destiny. Mara always believed that he was utilizing the most of his talent, and he could only rely on destiny to become a formal wizard. However, destiny was not something one could ask for. Besides, it was almost always accompanied by great danger. Most known destinies were gained by risking lives. Rarely any destinies were easily taken unless someone accidentally bumped into their luck, like what Mara just went through. Mara's words put despair into Anger's mind. Formal wizards. An extinct sight in the old earth. How should he find any? Everyone was speechless. Leon put a hand on Anger's shoulder to comfort him. It was about the only thing he could do right now. Some moments later, Mara spoke again. "You said you had 2 troubles on your mind. I can't help you with John now, so how about telling me the other one?" The other trouble. Something flashed through Anger's mind. According to Mara, a formal wizard could cure teacher and someone with great talent could become a formal wizard without spending much time. Great talent? If he could become a real wizard himself, he could help John. This other trouble Anger mentioned was about his curiosity towards people with supernatural powers, and a desire to follow their steps. He wanted to become a wizard too. "Mr. Mara, can I become your student and learn wizardry?" asked Anger earnestly. Mara was surprised by this for quite a while before he let out a hearty laughter. "Wizardry is not something that's simple. Talent is the first and foremost condition you must have. I've traveled around the Empire and tested on nearly 10,000 people, and my grandchildren are the only ones with talent. See? This is very rare." Anger did not back up. "Mr. Mara, can you please check on me and see if I have talent?" Mara looked at Anger up and down and nodded. "This is quite simple. I can even look at everyone in the Pat Manor if you want. Let's consider this a return of your favor then." Mara's seemingly generous offer also contained a will to help the Pat family train talented wizards. However, considering how scarce they were, it was already extremely hard to find one single talent, let alone do it in this small family. Besides, giving such tests did not really cost Mara anything. He only needed a medium, and mediums could be reused without taking any loss. His mission to the old earth was to look for talents for the academy, so the academy had given him mediums. Helping Anger with the test meant that he would be rid of the favor for free. Chapter 12, Talent Test. John was sound asleep because of Mara's spell, so Anger did not wake him. He asked the mute servant to bring him back to his room. Then everyone else went back to the castle. Leon told the servants to gather everyone under the age of 50 into the hall and let Mara do his test on them. Anger wanted to go first, but Leon stopped him and whispered, "Let the servants try this out first." Anger already understood even when Leon did not explain why. As Mara said, there probably would not be a single talent among 10,000 people. Being untalented would surely embarrass someone. If he was the last one after all the failed servants, the embarrassment would not be as terrible. As long as none of the servants turned out to be a surprise. Soon enough, about 100 servants in the manor who had not yet reached their 50s stood in a line in front of the castle. They were all called up while they were asleep, but none dared to complain. They were standing straight, quietly. "All are here then? Let's begin the test," said Mara. He added. One by one. The testing ground was a narrow closet. Leon asked the servants to empty it beforehand, and only left something that Mara required. Mara sat on the main seat, while Anger, Leon, Eaton, and the grandchildren sat on his sides. The space across from Mara was left open for the testees. A deep-sea fish oil candle burned in a lamp on the table. The gentle yet strong light illuminated the narrow tiny closet, making it bright as day. Mara took out a red crystal ball from his robe and placed it on the desk. It looked completely normal, only that it was much darker compared to the floating, transparent one beside Mara. The Abel's Eye, or the talent sphere, is made from the eyeball of a behemoth called Abel's from the Abyss Plane, said Mara. He began to explain, the beast is not really strong, but its soul possesses extraordinary power. The talent sphere crafted using its sight can reflect one's soul and show us that man's talent. The first one to be tested was the maid called Ori, who took care of Anger's daily life. Ori was 15, only 1 year older than Anger. She and Anger shared a close relationship in daily lives like friends rather than master and servant. Ori came in with a serious expression, but she secretly winked at Anger when no one was looking. Anger gave her a simple explanation about what this was about. Hearing this, Ori's eyes brightened. So a talented one could become a legendary wizard? Her heartbeats intensified so much that she could hear them herself. This was a chance to change her life. Realizing this, Ori's once relaxed mood immediately tensed up. She bowed to Mara with respect and sat across him while trying to hide her excitement. Mara pointed to the red talent sphere. The test is simple. Put your hand on this crystal ball and do not let go, then observe your surroundings. If you see any changes, you're talented. Changes? Ori was confused for a moment, so was everyone else. Mara continued, different individuals will see different phenomena. Here's an example. When I touched the talent sphere for the first time, I saw the weak burning flames in the fireplace not far from me becoming bigger. Nobody else could see it. That meant I had the talent, said Mara. He thought about something else before saying, the sphere cannot tell the level of one's talent, but it is said that one can gain a hint about his or her future from the change. It's only a rumor though. There has been no proof, so personally, I don't believe it. I've learned fire spells and it wasn't any easier than doing water spells. My granddaughter Aline heard various noises upon touching the sphere. That, too, is a change, said Mara. He then pointed at the chubby boy Alan. As for him, he saw a piece of brown bread appear in a dish out of nowhere. That's a change as well. If you do not see anything at all after keeping your touch for 1 minute, then I'm afraid you basically have no talent, Mara shrugged. When he finished, Mara went back to being silent and pushed the talent sphere towards Ori. Ori swallowed hard. She then reached out a trembling hand, and placed it on the sphere. When the small hourglass on the desk made one flip, 1 minute, Ori shook her head in disappointment and left on her own accord. Mara retained his blank expression. Next. Time passed. Dozens of people had taken the test and none succeeded. When an honest-looking young man did his test, his expression became sharp. I just felt a breeze against myself, as if I'm standing in a sea of winds, said the young man. He hugged the air in front of him and seemed to be enjoying something. There it is. A talented one. Count Eaton exclaimed in surprise. He totally did not expect to find one all the way out here, in the countryside, when they found none back at the capital. Leon became excited as well. He happily asked head maid Mana about the young man. Mana, however, looked at the honest young man and curled her lips. The man had quite a bad name in the manor, and someone like him was actually talented? Mana silently cursed Lady Luck for being unjustified and answered Leon in a low voice, his name is Fox, son of the gardener, Glenn. Fox? Leon never heard of him. It did not matter though. There were lots of servants in the manor. In a high spirit, Leon ordered Mana, take 100 gold coins from the storage and present them to wait. Mara's deep voice suddenly echoed inside the room. When hearing Leon mentioning coin, Fox was feeling quite proud. When Mara spoke, however, he slumped down quickly, sweat drops showed on his forehead. A sea of winds? No one dared to lie to me back at the capital. Now someone here actually made up a story in front of my face. Do you really think white wizards have no temper? Mara Humphrey'd, and a strong storm began circling around Fox. A sea of winds was it? I'll grant you that wish. Enjoy this whisper of wind. There was screaming before Fox was blown out of the window of the third floor by the wind and fell onto the ground, followed by constant screeches and cries. Leon's expression went pale as he asked, "Mr. Mara, what happened? Was Fox lying?" Mara sneered, "The change can only be seen by the testee, true. But once that happens, the talent sphere will flash to tell me that talent has appeared." Hearing Mara's words, everyone quickly understood the reason for the incident. They had been watching. The sphere never gave out anything from the start, which meant Fox was truly telling lies. Leon showed obvious anger and turned to the head maid Mana, "Don't let me see Fox's face in Gru Town, starting from tomorrow." Mana made a bow to acknowledge the order before she left the room. No one thought about what would become of Fox. Mara tidied up his robe a bit and lifted his impatience before he proceeded with the test. 2 hourglass hours had passed. All the servants were done, including head maid Mana and the guard knights. No one was talented. Finally, Mara shifted his gaze onto Anger. "This is it." Anger had made up his mind. "I'll go first. I'm also interested in wizardry. Mr. Mara said that wizards all have a long lifespan and that they can live forever." "That's what I wish for," said Leon. He stopped Anger and sat in front of Mara himself. He then said, "I can see much more scenery that way. I want to see everything this world has to offer." Anger did not move back. Instead, he sat beside Leon. "You first." Anger showed a fist to Leon. This was what they would do when encouraging each other during childhood. Leon rubbed Anger's soft hair with a smile. Then he reached for the talent sphere. The white sand of time in the hourglass flowed down slowly. Leon looked around the room, trying to spot a change. A minute passed. Leon lifted his hand and grave disappointment was written in his expression. "It seems I'm not talented," Leon spoke helplessly. He could not find any changes during the minute. As Mara said, talent was extremely rare. "It's your turn then," Leon patted Anger's shoulder. Anger nodded and slowly put his hand on the smooth surface of the talent sphere. Chapter 13, Roaming the Wonderland. Immediately when Anger touched the talent sphere, a bright flash of red light appeared from the object. Red light. Everyone stared at the talent sphere with their mouth agape. This time there was a real talent. Leon watched with joy. Brother Anger was a talented one? Leon clenched his fists because of the insuppressible excitement. He might be happy too if one of the servants showed up as a talent. Still, servants were only servants, and they could only provide the family with limited convenience. Anger, however, was a true family member, and his closest brother. Even if Anger had to stay an apprentice, the Pat family would benefit from this greatly. Surprise only showed on Count Eaton's face briefly before it was replaced by thoughtfulness. It could not be denied now that the Pat family would rise. If the Morn family offered their alliance now, they might gain the support of more power wielders. Alan and Aline, on the other hand, did not give the situation as much consideration as their father. Alan's chubby face was not carrying any particular emotion, he only looked at Anger with his head tilted and a trace of curiosity shone in his eyes. As for Aline, she was smiling at Anger with a bit of silliness. She was just happy because she can learn wizardry together with Anger now. The only regret in her heart for having to leave her homeland had disappeared, now she only held great expectation towards the future. Mara too, recovered from his surprise quickly. However, the person who was the center of the crowd, Anger, had fallen into a strange experience. Upon touching the talent sphere, Anger found himself floating up. He immediately felt excitement because this was just the change he was hoping for. Happiness climbed onto his expression as he realized he was really talented. Suddenly, he heard the sound of melody and drum beats outside the closet, as if the chorus team was performing a carol. Weird. His brother had already asked the dancers and musicians to leave. They were still here? Anger turned his head to ask Leon about this, only to notice something even more strange. Apart from himself that had been floating in the air, there was not a single soul in the closet. His brother, Mr. Mara, Count Eaton and his children. They were all gone. The room was not totally empty though. The talent sphere on the desk was still there, and as always, the candle was burning quietly. Everything seemed fine besides the absence of everyone. The music outside became louder. Anger frowned. He slowly floated towards the door and pushed it open. The hallway outside was decorated in an elegant style. Graceful curtains and large wall paintings sat on the walls on both sides, with knight armors and statues occupying the corners. His father Pat used to like such luxurious nobleman's style, and the brothers never changed it after his death. The wind in the night moved the curtain aside. Anger looked through the window. There was only silence and darkness. Weird. Really weird. Everything he saw, furniture, wall hangings, were familiar to him. Yet why did he sense an indescribable strangeness? Every door in the Pat Manor had 2 lamps in the shape of a lion's heart on both sides. The lion's heart was the emblem of the Pat family. Servants filled oil in them every day and light them up upon nightfall, so the fire would keep burning until the next dawn. This bore the meaning of the fire in lion's heart that never dies. However, Anger did not see any firelight outside now. Even the iron gate outside of the castle was shrouded in darkness. Is this really Pat Manor? Where is everyone? Questions emerged from Anger's mind. The melodious music was still going, but Anger began to feel something strange about it. He looked out of the window again. The sky was full of stars, even with several patterns he never saw before. However, there should be hardly any stars that could be observed in Grutown once the month of the freezing earth came. Only limited, fixed stars that were extremely far away would show up now. Clear weather during this month would expose 7 or 8 stars at best. As of now, the sky outside was full of them, as if Grutown was still enjoying the midsummer. Fear rose from Anger's consciousness. This was absolutely not right. Maybe he was no longer in the real Pat Manor. Taking a deep breath, Anger turned around and prepared to head back to the closet. No matter what was going on outside, returning there could comfort him. On his way, however, 2 large poker cards suddenly showed up in front of him. There was no poker in the old earth, even though John once made a deck of such cards and gave them to old Pat. Pat was quite fond of such a creative card game, and the game became popular in the manor for a time. However, as Anger remembered, the game never went beyond the grounds of Pat Manor. Could this be related to the earth? The pair of cards in front of Anger was the same as the ones made by Jonathan. Even the patterns on them were identical, only that what he was looking at now was several hundreds of times bigger. They were the size of adults. Aces. One was heart, the other was spade. What surprised Anger most was that they both had limbs, like bamboo sticks. They swayed left and right while walking. The ace of hearts was carrying a crusader's sword and a lance, while the ace of spades was holding a round shield and a chain hammer. They were fast. They already rushed onto Anger before Anger could react. By the time he reacted, he no longer had the chance to run. The next second, Anger was trapped between them. The cards kept moving forward as if Anger did not exist. However, Anger could not get himself away from between the broad surfaces of the cards, so he could only move along with them. He tried very hard to escape, but the best he could do was to get his feet off the ground, which still did not stop the cards from carrying him away. Anger gave up in the end and just followed the card soldiers. Soon, Anger found himself in the hall, where the music he heard just now was coming from. The music was from the dancing stage, but when Anger looked towards there, no one was playing music. Several teacups with hearts printed on them were hopping in front of the instruments, creating the music. Since when could teacups do music? Anger had not calmed himself before he noticed that the swordsman of hearts and the guardsman of spades had vanished somehow. Since he was in the hall and already witnessed a great deal of the strange world, Anger puffed up his courage and walked towards the center of the hall, instead of trying to go back to the closet. The hall was well lit, with all sorts of strange objects minding their own business everywhere. Apart from the teacups, Anger saw walking toy soldiers, plush owls flying and playing around the crystal chandelier, dragonflies with rainbow colors patrolling the air, and unfamiliar sunstones and moonstones flashing in different colors. Looking at more and more strange sights, Anger still felt nervous, but his fear had mostly gone away. He noticed that all creatures here were blind to his presence. He floated towards the colorful dragonflies to observe them, but they simply flew away without paying Anger any attention. Anger did not know if they could not see him, or just were not interested in him. After floating around for some more, he saw the tip of clothes on a chair near the main table shifting. The chair had its back facing him, so he was not sure about it. Someone was sitting there? Anger carefully controlled his body to move towards the main table. As he approached, he became sure about his idea, since he already heard the sound of the knife touching on plates and the noise of book pages being turned. Someone was eating while reading? Anger was really curious about the figure now. He had a vague idea that he was no longer in Pat Manor, but a parallel space of it. His teacher mentioned parallel worlds before, but it was only hypothetical back on Earth. However, this was not Earth, maybe not even the same universe where the Earth was in. Maybe the existence of parallel worlds was possible? In this parallel world, there was the Pat Manor, but not the Pat family. Maybe the one sitting on the chair was the owner of Pat Manor in this world. Anger took a wild guess. Chapter 14, Mr. Bunny. Anger took a turn in the air to gain a better view. This time, he saw the man sitting by the table. Or not. Anger could not call it a man from its looks. To be precise, it was a small bunny wearing a gentleman's attire. Should he call it Mr. Bunny? Less than half a meter tall, with a pure, snow-white coat, and long ears showing a pale pink color inside and decorated with soft, furry fringes. Its eyes had the color of a crimson gem, embedded on its adorable little head. The ears were almost as long as its own body. If one ignored all those strange decorations, it was just an extremely cute rabbit that could easily make any girl scream in delight. Anger would have fallen in love with the creature too if not given the circumstances. Now, he already raised his alertness to the best extent and no longer had the mood to admire the rabbit's cuteness. Most of Anger's attention was on Mr. Bunny itself. Its clothing was the biggest difference it had compared to regular pet rabbits. It was not wearing anything on the bottom. There was a tailcoat with lace edgings and red diamond patterns on it. A black top hat sat between those ears, and a small badge with a smiling face hung on the edge of the hat. The most attractive piece was the small, gold-rimmed monocle over one of its eyes, which gave the adorable bunny some gentlemanly look. Also, Mr. Bunny was not sitting on the chair as Anger thought. It was floating in front of the table, with its eyes fixed on a thick book with a violet cover on the table. Anger circled around Mr. Bunny and realized that it would not pay him any attention, just like the other creatures. It might be that it was simply too focused on its book and never noticed the sudden visitor. After roaming around the hall for some more, Anger only felt more and more curious about this world. Was this really a parallel world? Did he just transmigrate? He could not get an answer at all. More importantly, he was no longer sure if he had passed the talent test. As he fought with all the confusion, an idea suddenly crossed his mind. No, the idea was so abrupt that Anger did not even know if that was his own idea, or it was someone else's. It was telling his mind to get back to the closet. Getting back to the closet from where he transmigrated here. That was all the idea told him. Without a doubt, Anger agreed with the idea. He was not sure where it came from, but he trusted his instinct. As he turned to leave the hall, he heard the sound of turning pages from Mr. Bunny not far from him. Anger turned back to look at the violet-covered book the bunny was reading and suddenly stopped his movement for some reason. He quietly floated to Mr. Bunny and checked out the content of the book. The book was standing on the table. The book cover was clear to read. There was nothing special on it, kinda like a romance novel loved by noble ladies. There was a line of strange symbols at the top. Anger could not read them. It was probably the title. Then there was a cartoon-style picture below and a simply sketched castle in the background. There was a blurry cartoon girl in the foreground, red hat, long, curly brown hair, blue skirt, and white shoes. The facial features and her clothes were all not very detailed, like something drawn by children. The use of colors was great though. A castle and a girl. Is this one of the princess tales teacher used to tell? All bedtime stories Anger ever knew were told by John when Anger was small. Most of the stories were about ancient figures which meant to lecture him about human virtue. A small part of them was Grimm's fairy tales. Anger never liked them, but he still remembered some of the names, such as the famous Princess Snow White and Cinderella. This was why Anger instantly thought about those stories when he saw the cover drawn in a little girl's style. He did not think about the cover for much time. He could not read it anyway, so he floated behind Mr. Bunny and began reading the book. He saw the content of the book just now and could only make out that it was a picture book. Anger could not understand any of the words, but he could still speculate the story by the pictures. It seemed like a fairy tale. A girl bumped into a strange land. She could drink some wine to become small as a rat or eat some cake to be as big as a giant. There was a bowl of mushroom soup. Drinking from the left made her shorter while drinking from the right made her taller. With all of these surprises, the girl started an amazing journey with strange creatures. Anger enjoyed the story. He felt somewhat familiar with it, but he quickly put that emotion away to keep reading the book. Time passed. Things around him were becoming weirder, but Anger realized none of them. Firstly, Mr. Bunny was turning the pages along with Anger's reading speed. Next, the plush owls, poker soldiers, bunny teacups and rainbow dragonflies on the other side of the hall all came around him. However, Anger was totally attracted by the beautiful journey in the story and was completely oblivious of his surrounding. Anger did not take any of the abnormalities to heart. Instead, he joyfully placed his own spirit together with the girl in the story. Anger felt himself becoming the main character of the story and running after a talking bunny. Everything was beautiful. All creatures here had peculiar looks, but they all showed kindness. Anger even thought that this was the Wonderland. As he kept himself immersed in the wonderful world, a sharp cackling came from the castle far away. Oh no, the Queen of Hearts is here. Shava, you need to leave, or the Queen will turn you into a card. Urged the talking bunny. The Queen of Hearts? Leave? Shava? Anger stared at everything with a blank face. Who's Shava? I'm Ango and huh? Who am I? He realized something was wrong. He recalled seeing the bunny in tailcoat in the manor castle, and the bunny was wait, what was the bunny doing? The beautiful journey in Anger's mind instantly shattered into pieces. He knew he forgot something, and he knew he must remember it. He screamed with his mind, but his memory kept falling apart until he could not even remember what he was doing just a second ago. Shava, what are you doing? Run. The Queen is coming. The bunny dragged Anger's hand. This is dangerous, you need to go to my rabbit hole to escape. Next, Anger was unconsciously led away by the bunny. The mountains afar were still booming with green, but all the fantasies now carried a lifeless strangeness. My rabbit hole is right there. Get in and let me deal with the queen, the bunny said before he pushed Anger. Anger fell onto the ground with a trip. The bunny was still urging him to get inside the hole, but sudden alertness came about Anger's mind. Get back to the closet. The message appeared inside his head abruptly. The closet? Anger's once blank expression turned sharp. He remembered the closet. He also recalled that he was taking his talent test, and fell into a strange parallel world for no reason, and a reading bunny. When he realized everything, the world around him shifted. All became nothingness. The rabbit hole was replaced by a bloody maw filled with sharp fangs. The adorable bunny behind him also turned into a tattered ragdoll with patches sewn all around it. Anger stepped back, then quickly ran away from the maw. As he left the area, he found himself back at the hall where Mr. Bunny was. He was no longer relaxed as before, however, because he just noticed that a group of card soldiers had surrounded him. Chapter 15, The Ice Coffin of Healing. There were also many cute-looking toys apart from the card soldiers. More importantly, Mr. Bunny, who had been reading a book, was also floating in front of Anger, staring at him with its tiny crimson eyes. Anger was not sure what the bunny was thinking about, but those emotionless stares sent a chill down his spine. The cuteness he felt a moment ago no longer existed. Everything in front of Anger only terrified him. One of the card soldiers suddenly lunged at Anger. With a start, he grabbed the book on the table and threw it at the soldier. A bloody maw burst out of the cover image of the violet-covered image book. It instantly mauled the card soldier to pieces and gulped it down. Anger was terrified, motionless by what he just saw. When every creature around him had their attention on the monstrous mouth, Anger bolted out of the circle and dashed away from the hall as fast as he could manage. Hee. Don't go, Shava, let's have some fun. A ghost-like female voice came from his back. Anger heard the voice, though he did not make any stop. He kept running towards the next corner. The closet was just around it as long as his memory about the place was still true. The closet is safe. Anger did not know when that idea came about his mind or whether it was correct. He did not have the time to tell anyway. This was his only choice. The door to the closet was just ahead. Anger sprinted towards it. As he stepped into the door, a great pain on his back made Anger fell to the ground. He turned around and saw a red-haired, heavily powdered woman with lots of stitches on her face. She was wearing an elegant but heavily decorated dress with dark stripes on it, and a tiara with a black heart pattern. Anger did not know who she was, but considering the sharp pain coming from his back and the drops of blood on her blade-like nails, Anger was immediately sure that was his own blood. The woman showed cruelty in her eyes and screeched non-stop. However, no matter how loud she screamed, she never stepped past the door, as if the door of the closet was a barrier separating two worlds. Anger watched for a while and made sure she could not get in before he finally let out a sigh of relief. However, he became worried again soon after. He was still facing another trouble. Anger checked out the closet again. There were chairs and a desk, a lit candle, and a red crystal ball above his eye, the talent sphere. Looking at the sphere that had been giving out a red light, something inside Anger told him to approach and try putting his hand on it. Har. Never thought I could have found my destiny to break through, let alone finding another talent, in this remote little town. God bless Mara, God bless my family. Mara's laughter reached Anger's ears. After a bit of confusion, Anger found himself back at the real world again. Everyone around him was looking at him with either pleasant surprise or admiration. Nothing seemed wrong here. They don't know I just transmigrated? Or was it not transmigration at all, but the change when a talented one would face when taking the test? If so, that change was downright scary. As Anger was still thinking about the strange experience he went through in the parallel world, something grasped his hand. He looked aside and saw Leon pinching his palm since he had been spacing out. Stop staring, Anger. Mr. Mara was asking about your change, Leon smiled. Oh. Anger responded. He was not feeling any joy from becoming a talent, only exhaustion, after escaping all that great danger. When I touched the talent sphere, I found myself floating in the air. Mara interrupted him, floating? Yes. A change, that is. You're a talent, there's no doubt about it. Anger was going to tell them his experience in the parallel world, but when Mara stopped him, he decided to stay silent instead. He only nodded in return and went back to his seat with a polite smile. Mr. Mara, now that I do have the talent, can I become your student and study wizardry? The unpleasant travel in the parallel world affected his mindset greatly, but it did not change his will to become a wizard. Mara put away his talent sphere and smiled. I'm an apprentice myself, so I'm not qualified to teach you. However, I came to the old earth to look for talents for the academy. You're one, and since you're willing to step onto this path, you can follow me and leave for the academy tomorrow. The White Coral Floating Island Academy isn't big, but it has good fame among all wizard organizations from the south. They'll not let a talented one down. Anger hesitated upon hearing those words. He had to leave here and go to the unknown academy? He already expected something like this, but he still could not make up his mind when it finally came to it. Could his teacher hold on until he made enough progress to come back? Additionally, Anger agreed to his brother to accompany him to the succession ceremony, which was tomorrow as well. When would they meet again? Anger's expression darkened. He did not even realize that he had been fumbling around his thumbs, a gesture showing that he was faltering over something. Of course, Leon was reluctant to let his brother go. However, he still stepped up and put an arm around Anger's shoulders as he whispered to him, "Don't you worry. You heard Mr. Mara. It was just an academy, a school. Like how you go to the Waterford exclusive school every spring. It won't take too long. I'll wait for you in the manor." But Anger hesitated. As his brother, Leon already knew what Anger was trying to say. "If you're still worrying about old John, when I go to Waterford this time, I'll find the best doctor there is to help him. I'll keep him alive and wait for you to save him, even if I have to spend the last coin in the family." Anger did not reply. He was the only one knowing the fact that the world's consciousness was rejecting John, not some kind of disease. No one could save John except a wizard. As Anger was still faltering, Mara, who had been listening to their conversation, spoke up. "You can't leave your teacher behind?" "I can't." Mara was not sure why Anger was so committed towards Jonathan. John was just a child's teacher, not Anger's lifelong mentor, nor a close family member. Mara could not understand the tight bond between them. Mara gave Anger a thoughtful look before he said, "Back at the Crimson Auction, I once spent my 2 years saving on a magic scroll called the Ice Coffin of Healing. It cannot cure your teacher, but it will sustain your teacher's life temporarily, only for 5 years. What do you say? 5 years? Anger's pupils became larger. He could do many things in 5 years. He did not think he could actually become a wizard in such a time, but it would give him a chance, give him hope. Before Anger could answer, Leon walked up and bowed to Mara. "I don't really know about the wizarding world, but there is no free lunch in my world. As Mr. Mara said, wizards are human beings too, and humans can never escape being bound by relationships and favors. Now, Mr. Mara is willing to use the valuable item on John, but what do you expect in return?" Leon's words cleared Anger's mind. Mara was just a guide. Talents were rare, yes, but as a talented one himself, Mara should not be caring for Anger too much. So, when Mara offered to use his Ice Coffin of Healing scroll, what was he expecting? Mara looked at Leon up and down with a little bit of approval in his expression. "In 5 years, it is almost impossible for Anger to become a wizard, so my scroll could be considered used for nothing. However, I can still give it to you, as long as Anger accept my condition." Chapter 16, 3 Arts. In the month of frost, bits of snow fell from the sky. Even the sea in the distance had frozen. A large, black wooden carriage slowly moved along the spiral mountain road near the sea. The carter held a horse rein with one hand, which was connected to a fierce Highland horse wearing a beautifully crafted saddle, and a bronze brazier on the other hand. He would place his stiff face close to the brazier now and then, to absorb the faint heat emerging from the brazier's vent holes. 2 sliding glass windows sat on both sides of the carriage. One of them was opened by someone, a pretty girl, looking around the scenery with blinking eyes. As the girl had her fun, a plumpy hand reached out and shut the glass window. "Achoo. Aline, it's so cold outside. Don't do that. I'm gonna freeze up," said the chubby boy in a childish voice. "Humphrey. Brother is so weak. Look, Brother Pat never said a word about the weather. You're the only one complaining." The carriage was carrying Mara and his companions. Anger was not expecting being cued for no reason. He did not participate in the pair's argument. He only smiled and kept himself on one side of the carriage. Mara was sitting beside him with eyes closed, meditating. Alan twitched his lips and mumbled, "Brother Pat, Brother Pat. Who's your real brother?" Aline was sharp enough to hear it. She did not protest though. She only let out another Humphrey and rolled her eyes at Alan secretly. Then she sat beside Anger and began to chat, not minding if anyone was listening to her. Aline never went outdoors often, so most of her topics were chit-chats among the nobles in the city. Anger was not interested, but he did not stop Aline. He would even nod in response now and then to pretend to be listening. However, most of his mind was occupied by his own train of thought. Mara offered a condition on that day. If Anger agreed, Mara would give him the Ice Coffin of Healing scroll. Anger complied in the end because that condition did not sound too hard. If Anger broke through into a level 2 apprentice wizard, he must accompany Mara and explore a ruin site. Mara did not say anything about the ruin. He only mentioned that he did not know if the ruin was dangerous. The journey would be unpredictable, but Mara did require Anger to be a level 2 apprentice to join. It took Mara almost 10 years to break through into intermediate apprentice, and Anger was not even sure he could achieve that. This meant Anger could get the scroll in exchange for possible danger. Worth it. After using the ice coffin of healing spell on John, Anger stayed in the manor for another day. He then took his luggage, bid farewell to Leon reluctantly, and stepped onto his journey towards the unknown land together with Mara. The nightfall had come. Such darkness during the winter made it harsher. Even the experienced carter had to stop their journey, find a temporary shelter and wait out the night. They stayed in the partially dug out pit inside a mountain boulder and made a camp. The carter tied his horse somewhere nearby and put some blankets on it. Alan hugged his knees to his chest and became more like a ball now. "I'm cold," he mumbled. "Come on, why did you grow all that weight when you can't even withstand this?" Aline complained, although her expression showed care towards her brother. She even took out a thick cloak from the tent and put it around Alan. Mar looked at the interaction between his grandchildren with a smile. He waved a hand, and a clump of green light flew inside Alan. "The preserve heat spell will last 10 hours, but don't rely on it too much. You always had a weak body, so exercise every day from now on and improve your build, so this cold won't bother you anymore," said Mara to Alan. He continued. "And if your talent leans towards the bloodline art, it'll also strengthen your body once you start to train on it." Alan nodded in confusion. When the green light hit his body, he already felt the change in temperature around himself, which only triggered his curiosity towards wizardry. "Hey Grand, we already went through the talent test, right? Do we have to take it again at the White Coral Floating Island Academy?" asked Aline. Anger listened in as well. He wanted to know it too. What he saw during his test was just too weird. He asked Alan and Aline afterward. Aline heard noises while Alan saw another brown bread in the plate. They were changes, but they were acceptable. Anger, however, transmigrated to another world. He could not understand any of it. He still believed that it was a change during his test, but not fully. This was why when Aline asked Mara about the test, Anger immediately paid his attention. Mara stroked his beard with a smile and spoke to Aline. "The Abel's eye can only tell if one's talented or not. It can't distinguish the art of the talent. Once you're at the academy, they will give you a more detailed test. You'll see. Mind this. The test at the academy isn't a determinant one either. Even if it tells you that your talent leans towards element, you don't have to focus your training on the element art. It's all about your own will." Mara paused a little. "Oh right, you can study any art despite your talent tendency, true, but certain arts cannot be learned just because you try hard. For example, there are some special branches from the occult arts such as prophecy and astrology that still require absolute talent. I never told you about the arts of wizards, didn't I? I'll explain that today then," said Mara after some consideration. He then said, "There are many directions a wizard can choose, and different arts have mostly been established after being perfected for tens of thousands of years. There are many arts and branches, so I won't be telling you every one of them. I'll only explain the 3 major arts currently agreed by the world of wizards. The element art, including the constitution of nature and the source of all. Those who wield this art are called elementalists. The bloodline art, people absorb the bloodline of strong creatures to strengthen themselves. These are called bloodline wizards. The occult art, the aggregation and termination of mysteries. Wizards who learn are occultists. The 3 major arts can be used to describe most systems in the wizarding world. Of course, there are a lot of relevant systems apart from them, such as the alchemy art, the summoning art and so on. Most wizards more or less know some of them. There are also wizards who focus on these supportive systems, but that's a rare sight. Among the 3 major arts, the element art has the most devotees. Almost all wizards know at least several elemental spells, while the occult art has the least followers. Also, the differentiation in the strength of the occult art is also the biggest. Strong ones are extremely strong, the weak ones are weak beyond imagination. This is mainly because the occult art has complicated systems. 2 most famous figures from the south are Modula the archaeologist and Sunders the phantom master. Both are level 2 occultists, yet they have completely different levels of strength. Mara sighed with great emotion when speaking of them. As for the bloodline art, Mara sniffed as if recalling bad memories. He then said in a cold voice, "Most of them are able-bodied and bad-tempered. Though they are all strong. Very strong." Everyone fell into silence. "What is Grandpa's art?" Aline asked in curiosity. "Me? Considering the 3 major arts, I could be considered as a blaze wizard from the element art. However, most of my studies are about drawing spell formulas, so I'm more like a supportive wizard, a spell formula drawer." The conversation lasted for a while. The shade of night became thicker, even the giant mountains and woods in the distance had become obscured shadows, like shifting monsters in the blowing wind. Everyone was getting tired and eventually fell into a deep slumber. Anger laid in the simple tent. His eyes were still brimming with intelligence. The conversation tonight touched his emotions greatly. He did not know there were so many paths for wizards. One single branch like fire wizards from the element art could be further divided into blaze wizards, lava wizards, frost fire wizards, and all kinds of branches mixing a number of elements together. One could step onto the path of truth either by making it a form of expertise or simply having an extensive read about the branch. With John's enlightenment, Anger held great curiosity to see to the root of everything in the world, especially when John told him about the amazing phenomena in the universe. Could he explore all these mysteries once he became a wizard? With the expectancy towards the future, Anger slowly fell asleep. Chapter 17, The Vichy Harbor. After transferring between many carriages during half a month, the group finally reached the northernmost part of Goldspank Empire, the Vichy Harbor. It was not easy to travel from the old Earth to the Fey continent. Only at the beginning of every year would a merchant ship from Fey continent reach the Vichy Harbor and stay for 2 days. To avoid missing the ship, the group acted early, and it had not even been the month of resuscitation when they reached the harbor. 8 days till the month of resuscitation. The merchant ship from the Fey continent does not have a fixed schedule. 8 days earlier was the fastest record it has, and 38 days behind the beginning of the month was the slowest record. We'll stay in Moonwater City until we board the ship. With that, Mara led everyone to the Bounty Guild in the center of the city. The Bounty Guild was a functional association of all knights in the nation who abode the nation's laws. They accepted missions from the guild put up by the nation and earned rewards. Of course, Mara did not bring everyone here to accept missions. The Bounty Guild possessed the most luxurious guest rooms in the whole Moonwater City. One could get services and accommodations that were far better than everywhere else as long as one could afford them. Money was the most important thing of all in the guild. As an elder of the Morn family, Mara always carried a fair amount of coins, and he was always willing to spend them. Once at the guild, he directly paid for everything they would need in these days, including Anger's share. You can go wherever you want these days, but I suggest you to stay put in the guild so we can find you quickly when the ship comes, Mara advised them. He then went back to his own room to meditate using every available second he could get. We're free? Alan and Aline exchanged a glance and exclaimed in joy. The kids were like prisoners who were allowed a temporary leave and who could not wait to breathe the air of freedom outside. Alan only blinked in happiness, same for Aline, though the latter paid some attention to Anger who had been standing nearby. Brother Pat, let's look around. People said the Moonwater City is the largest trading port in the country and you can find all kinds of things native to different nations. There's a street designed to sell foreign merchandise. Many people found their treasures there. Aline talked to Anger in a childish manner. What she should do next was probably grasp Anger's arm and beg. Anger looked towards the girl while feeling a headache. Their relationship warmed up during the traveling month, so Aline was becoming more open. Her initial shyness was no longer there. She was now pretty good at playing cute, although she still knew to avoid closer interaction. Anger was not bright about reading a girl's mind, but this was enough for him to realize what had been going on. He could not understand though. It was just a couple of days and Aline was already holding a special attitude towards him. Sigh. Women. He was still young. Besides, the pressure of that 5-year promise was still a weight on his heart, so he really could not care for much else. As for Aline's childish love, the only thing he could do was to keep a distance, to be responsible to himself and to respect Aline. No. I agreed to the teacher that I would practice my mind every day, so I'll go back to my room now. Maybe next time. Anger declined politely and went back to his room. Aline made a duck face, kicked the ground, and left the guild with Alan, who had no idea what was going on. Anger did not take out his teacher's assignment when he stepped into his room. Instead, he inspected the room in a relaxed manner. His room was facing the sea, with a broad balcony which allowed him to get a good view at the bustle Vichy harbor in the distance, as well as the shining surface of the sea. Anger looked down at the passers-by in the harbor who were as small as ants now. Apart from admiring the prosperity of the city, he also felt sudden, uncomfortable loneliness. He looked towards the south and through the grassland which extended hundreds of kilometers away. He imagined about the hills behind the grass and the peaceful town sitting among the hills, the place he had been living in for 14 years, his home. Brother, teacher. He muttered to himself, carrying undeniable homesickness. A dozen days passed quietly but surely. As the month of resuscitation arrived, the temperature gained an obvious rise, and several important routes on the sea were beginning to unfreeze. Groups of ocean-going ships appeared in the Vichy harbor. Mara hired a team of knights from the Bounty Guild to watch for merchant ships from the Fey continent day and night. Alan and Aline had their great fun during these days. They went out by dawn, returned after dusk, and bought lots of random stuff. The cold weather did not stop them in the least. Anger stayed inside to organize his belongings, especially the assignments left by Jonathan. They required lots of calculation and involved knowledge from different fields. Even a scholar from the Earth would agree that the assignment was vast and difficult. One did not need to be an expert in any of the fields, but one would not make any progress either if one did not have really extensive knowledge. Giving Anger these assignments showed John's great confidence and expectation towards Anger. Anger kept a schedule after leaving the Pat Manor. A month had passed, and he had only made like quarter progress with the assignment. He felt defeated. No matter what he felt though, he had to solve the puzzles. His teacher had left him something behind the puzzles, and he could only make out what that was after solving all of them. The second weekend into the month of resuscitation witnessed fine weather. Following the melted ice, the harbor became even more lively. Since he had been staying indoors for too long, Anger decided to hang out today. He put on his casual clothes for the first time after all these days, tidied himself up, and stepped out of his room while carrying the signature smile he used to show politeness to others. The hall of the Bounty Guild was busy as always. The thick smell of sweat greeted his nose. Most people hanging around here were knights living dangerous lives. Even the occasional female knights would mostly wash their exposed faces only. As for the smell on their bodies, they could not care. Anger frowned. He realized this was not the Gru town, and his brother could not protect him any longer. He was not even a noble in front of these people, only someone from a remote noble family. With this set in mind, he calmed his expression and resumed his innocent smile. He ordered a glass of Penang rum and some roasted meat from a bar table in the corner of the hall. He only sipped a little bit of the liquor. This thing with a pungent, fermented smell was not as delicious as the milk wine back in the manor. He munched on the meat while listening carefully to the various conversations among the surrounding adventurers. In a bar mixed with all sorts of figures like this, it was always easy to capture some unique information. This was what John told him in those wuxia stories from the Earth. Anger did not have much experience outdoors, so he did not know whether these sayings were true. However, that did not stop him from eavesdropping on the conversations. He would enjoy made-up boasts too. Ha! Did you hear? Halen Imperials who have been fighting the Empire. Lots of strange stuff happened over there. Important guys died for no reason, leaving a miserable sight behind them. Even the knights guarding them would wet them pants at night. The strongest mercenary knighthood in the guild, the Shining Gold's Pink Knights, haven't shown their faces for months. Were they the culprits? Another group of adventurers sitting near his table began talking about a war on the front line thousands of kilometers away. You guys remember? The capital lord of the Empire personally posted a job here to assassinate the top commander of Halen Imperial half a year ago. Trust me, these two incidents are related. All the adventurers talked aloud. Some of them were boasting about their own achievements, so they spoke exceptionally loudly. The man speaking just now made himself heard across the entire bar. Everyone agreed. That was their own guild against a hostile nation. Naturally, the people here supported the former. An ice-cold tune abruptly interrupted everyone's heated discussion. The Shining Gold's Pink Knights? Humphrey. That's the only thing you know? Let me tell you, the Halen incident could not be their deed. The Shining Gold's Pink isn't powerful enough. The speaker was wearing a water blue long garment with silver patterns on the edges. Expensive stuff. Watch what you're saying. Who the heck are you, talking about Shining Gold's Pink like that? Do you know what kind of trouble you'll get into? Everyone stared at him fiercely. Huh, you again? I know you have the certificate of Halen Chamber of Commerce, but that doesn't make you do whatever you like in the Empire. You're from Halen, so just keep shut and do your own business. Or are you looking for trouble? A rough male voice came up. The Halen merchant only gave him a cold glance before a dozen fully armored knights immediately rushed to protect him. The rough man could not possibly stand against all of them, but this was Goldspank Empire. The knights in the guild quickly joined him. He might be a common rogue, but he was a supporter of Goldspank Empire, and the knights could not just see him beat by the Halens. Each side now had a dozen strong, impetuous men wearing armors. The sudden showdown caused everyone in the bar to stop their actions. Chapter 18. Before leaving before the fight broke out for real, the Vice Master of the Moonwater City's Bounty Guild came and stopped them. Both sides agreed to stand down following the Vice Master's advice, eliminating the imminent conflict. Pity. Anger said to himself. The Halen merchant sat down and explained in a cold voice, as I said, the Halen incident could not have been caused by the Shining Goldspank Knights because it was not a human deed in the first place. Then he stayed silent. Not a human deed? Ghosts then? Nobody understood what he meant, but no one pushed either. Anger was just as curious as to the others. However, since he was about to leave the old Earth soon, the war might have ended for a long time by the time he came back from the Fey continent, So Anger put away his train of thought and finished his meat before he then left the guild. Thanks to ocean trades, the Moonwater City was only second to the capital when talking about prosperity. Anger was 14 now, and the biggest city he ever saw was Waterford, the governing city of Gru Town. The Moonwater City, however, was 3 times larger than Waterford, and this was without considering all those infrastructures. Everything here made Anger's eyes spin. He only saw magnificence and prosperity back at the balcony. Now as he looked at the city up close, he realized that delicacy and exquisiteness could also be found all over the place. God knew how many levels higher the city was compared to Gru Town, which only had stone houses. Anger wandered around slowly to observe different folks while thinking about stories and novels his teacher taught him. He even learned something new by combining them with reality. John told him to learn as he goes. Anger could not understand that before, but he was beginning to see when he started to travel outside the protection of his family, and he combined what he saw with what he learned. He reached his destiny soon, the Sanbana Trader Street. This was the place Aline talked about several days ago. It was famous because people here only sold what they transported over the sea, from the other countries. One would not find most of them in Gold's Paint Empire. Aline bought a bunch of things the other day, including several books with unknown originations called Powdering in Palaces, Tones, Fan Languages, and etc. The titles did not make much sense, but they were only actually about the makeups and how to combine clothing colors for ladies. Anger only glanced at the books while Aline quite enjoyed them. She even followed the instructions and bought some powders to make up her face. Such a young admirer of beauty. Aline's behaviors did hint to Anger to buy some books on the street. He planned to send some proper and rich historical materials to his teacher if he found any. The first thing that greeted him on Sanbana Trader Street was a statue in the center of a fountain. It was a gentleman in formal attire. This was the Sanbana Principe, a giant figure in the empire who initiated ocean trading 200 years ago. Naming the street after the man showed how much respect people held towards him. Both sides of the street were occupied by low yet broad buildings constructed with colorful bricks. Every shop tried their best to make themselves attractive. The signs and slogans were also showy. Anger saw a carnival clown playing ball tricks in front of a dessert shop who would make the crowd exclaim every now and then. Some kids dragged their parents and cried when they could not persuade their parents to buy sweets. The entire street was just so lively. Anger tried his best to keep his nobleman's image, but he was young after all, and he could not hold back the curiosity in his blinking eyes and could not help looking everywhere. In the end, Anger spent his first coins at a milk shop, with a cow's plush in front of its store, instead of his original destination, bookstore. He drank a full bowl of sweet milk, then let out a big smile when no one was looking. He immediately went back to his usual expression once he was out of the shop. When he took another pack of takeaway sweet milk, he even tried to act mature. Alas, my sister loves strong, sweet milk. Sorry for troubling you, mister, pretended Anger. Anger wiped his lips clean and stepped away, satisfied. It did not take him long to find a bookstore with the image of Thoth, the ancient god of knowledge, drawn on the door. The store mostly sold pulp paper books. There were rarely any leather books here. He picked up several random books to read. The shopkeeper wanted to yell at him first, but seeing Anger's appearance and his careful etiquette when reading, he swallowed his curse words back. He never liked customers who casually read through his books here, but he would not turn away a polite young nobleman either. The stories were good. He could even learn some deep meanings between the lines. This trip was worthwhile. Anger was never stingy about books. Soon, he was carrying several filled craft paper bags provided by the store. Hey mister, you seem really interested in various books. I have a collection of random volumes, could you wait a bit if you're willing to see them? The shopkeeper was overjoyed just by seeing Anger buying so many books. Customers like this were scarce these days. He also noticed that Anger bought all kinds of books, so he instantly had some new ideas. The shopkeeper collected many books from people of various foreign fleets, but most of them were too aged and tattered, and some of them were written in unknown language so they never got sold and could only collect dust in his storage. Now he just met a generous customer, he would not let this chance get away. Collections? Anger's eyes lit up. He agreed without giving it much thought. The shopkeeper quickly led Anger to the guest room upstairs and gave him a glass of fruit wine before he headed towards the storage. After a while, the owner brought 2 assistants and 3 large wooden boxes with them. These gave out the smell of mold. Anger frowned. They must have been kept in an extremely damp place to be like this. Oops. The traders from the Desert Kingdom haven't come in a long time, so we're out of drying powder, and the Moonwater City is far from being dry. Don't worry, I made inner packings for the books, no wetness will slip in, said the shopkeeper as he thumped on his chest. Anger did not question him. He only nodded and asked them to open the boxes. Before he could check the content of them though, A loud, deafening horn sound came from the sky above the Moonwater City. Chapter 20, Thuis, the man with red hair. The group took a carriage and reached the Vichy harbor soon. The merchant ship from Fey Continent, the Redbud, had been pulled ashore by this morning. After being unloaded in the forenoon, all cargo bays were now empty. Once it got loaded with new merchandise again tomorrow, the ship would set sail once more. Mara took everyone to the ship this early as a precaution. The ship only came once in a year, missing it would be disastrous. Do not run about or cause trouble once we're on the ship. The Redbud belongs to someone we absolutely don't want to offend, said Mara as he led the kids. He warned them, no ordinary ship can breach the icy sea and make it past the Sea of Silence. There's a rumor that the floating mech city is behind this. If it's true, even formal wizards wouldn't attempt to get on their bad side. So you all remember, get rid of those noble tempers no matter who you're up against, even if it's the most common sailor on the ship. Mara's warning sounded more serious this time. He ran into a lot of Sons of Riches during his travel in Goldspank Empire, and a good number of them would draw their weapons over the smallest conflict. This was why he was so serious about all this, to avoid unnecessary trouble. The three kids nodded quickly like chickens pecking on the ground. Mara was much experienced in dealing with the world, of course, he would not do the kids harm now. As Mara told them his experience, Anger began to inspect the Redbud in front of him carefully. It was huge, though maybe a little smaller than the cargo ships on Earth his teacher mentioned. Still, for Anger, who basically did not know much about the outside world, the Redbud was already the biggest vehicle he ever saw. The ship was half the size of the Pat Castle, with elegant, shining steel walls painted in violet and white. What attracted Anger most was the figurehead on the tip of the ship. It was the statue of a praying maiden wearing gauze robe, with her fingers crossed. Soft, long hair flew with the wind, while bits of redbud petals would fall off now and then. The whole statue looked holy and solemn, perfectly beautiful and graceful. Anyone would agree that it must have been the work of an extremely skilled crafter. Also, there was a pale, crimson-colored gem embedded in the center of the maiden's forehead. Anger felt something strange about the gem, but he could not really tell why. Oh, that's... Why is he here? Mara suddenly yelled. Anger looked at Mara to see the old man was staring towards the exit of the ship, somewhat terrified. Anger followed his gaze and saw a young man wearing red hair slowly walking down the redbud with a blank expression. He was dressed in a black windcoat with golden patterns, black trousers with white lining, and a pair of brown riding boots. His hairs were wild, but his expression was cold and emotionless. Everything about him seemed to be telling everyone to stay away from him. What, one of those ascetic uniformed guys? Anger muttered using the language John told him. What was it, Brother Pat? Asked Aline, who somehow was standing nearby. Anger just realized he could almost smell her fragrant hair. Anger silently took a step back and gained some distance. Nothing. I was wondering who that is. Aline saw the strange expression on Mara as well. Who is he, Grandpa? Mara did not reply. He only dragged everyone and walked along the boarding bridge quickly. When Aline wanted to ask again, he only growled at her, silence. This was something new for Aline. She pouted in frustration. Mara did not notice her emotion and kept his hurried steps. Seeing this, Alan quickly paced ahead and wiped some tears off his sister's eye corner using his little chubby hand. Anger whispered to Aline to comfort her, Mr. Mara must have his reasons. Anger was wondering about everything as well. Mara's attitude changed drastically upon seeing that man and never dared to look at him again. Maybe the man was Mara's enemy? As the group stepped onto the ship, the young man glanced towards the deck of the ship, puzzled. I get a strange feeling. Maybe it's just me. He kept walking away without giving it much thought. He came to look for someone else, and should not be wasting time on other matters. The night passed. The sun rose in the distance and covered the surface of the sea in gold. The ship's horn bellowed as anchors were pulled up and sailcloth hoisted. People ashore and on the deck waved at each other either in silence or in tears. In the heavy atmosphere, the Redbud slowly bid farewell to the old Earth and sailed towards the unknown distance. Anger stood on the deck and watched as the continent of the old Earth getting smaller. Apart from feeling lost, he also sensed foreboding, that this meant he would leave the homeland for real. What would he see the next time he returned? Would it be under the brilliant sunset or the beautiful morning glow? Anger shook his head. He smiled to himself and decided to put that sadness away. Next, he went back to his room and continued solving the puzzles John left him. 3 days passed in a blink of an eye. The ship went smoothly without any staggering, so Anger never had to worry about getting seasickness. However, his face still paled, due to many discomforts when living on a ship. There were knocks on the door. Fast and urgent. Anger put down his quill and paper and opened the door. A beautiful girl was standing there. She was wearing a white, lace princess dress. Long, Pink hair flowed down her shoulders, with a tiny bit of shyness in her expression. When she saw anger, her eyes quickly brightened up. "Brother Pat," she called in a friendly voice. "Eileen." Except for going to the mess hall for meals, Anger always stayed in his room doing his puzzles during the last 3 days. This was the first time he saw Eileen since they sailed. "Grandfather is back and he called for us. He has something to say," Eileen said. Anger nodded to her. "Okay. Just a second, let me get changed." They ran into the man with red hair that day. Mara asked a waiter to take care of their meals and rooms, then went towards the cabin on the top floor to look for someone. That was all the kids knew. Anger would not realize that Mara was already back if Eileen had not told him so. The 3 kids were living in the middle level of the ship, while the bottom level was occupied by sailors and various workers. Mara stayed on the top floor. They did not know exactly who lived up there, but they could guess that there must be someone important or power wielders like Mara. Following the waiter, Anger and Eileen arrived at Mara's cabin. The first thing they saw was Alan, who took a big bite on the cake he was holding, with white cream covered the edge of his mouth. Mara was sitting nearby with a grim expression while holding a leather scroll. Hearing the door opening, Mara raised his head and nodded towards the pair casually before asking them to sit in front of him. Alan finished his cake too. He joined them with a smile while still wiping his mouth. Eileen gave him a stare, then moved aside to let Alan sit near her. She also took out her handkerchief and helped Alan clean his mouth. Anger sat down and looked at the leather scroll on Mara's desk. There was a portrait of someone printed on it, and one single word above the portrait: "Wanted." "You probably want to know where I have been these 2 days, so I'll tell you first," said Mara. He chose to talk about something else in the end. There are 3 wizard groups permanently stationed on the Redbud, to welcome talented ones as well as protect the ship from sea monsters. Our White Coral Floating Island Academy is one of them. I have been discussing with the Academy's escorts up there, about Red-haired Thuis. Red-haired Thuis. Mara paused for a bit before he continued. "He was the man with red hair we saw the other day, and he came because of this wanted poster. You'll know who he is once we're at the Academy. For now, I'll only tell you one thing. Stay away from that man whenever you see him. His bad temper is well known across the entire South." When he finished, Mara's expression calmed down. He smiled at the 3 kids. "But I called you here for something else. I've talked to the escorts on the Redbud. Since you 3 are talents, it won't hurt to teach you about meditation earlier. This is why I need you here today." Chapter 21, Triangle Channeling. However, Mara paused. His eyes brimmed with an indescribable emotion. "Before teaching you the way of meditation, I need to tell you 2 facts, 2 common rules in the wizarding world. First, all wizards, including white wizards and black wizards, all follow the way of equivalent exchange. Though white ones consider this rule more seriously than black ones. Second, for wizards, everything has a price, except for knowledge. Knowledge is priceless. Unless you're very close to someone, if you want to acquire knowledge from a wizard, you must pay the cost for it." With that, Mara looked at Anger. "I can teach meditation to Eileen and Alan for free since they're my family, but not you. If you want to learn it, you must pay me, and you don't have anything I want right now." Anger only nodded with his expression unchanged. John already taught him when he was small, that no one in this world would suddenly become generous to you for no reason. Mara had been a great man to Anger. He had even given Anger a valuable magic scroll in exchange for a mere possible promise. On the outside, Anger did not show much towards such generosity, but Anger was worrying about this deep in his mind. He finally sighed in relief today, when Mara finally made it clear. Eileen seemed worried and tried to speak, but was stopped by Mara's stern glare. "I can't teach you meditation now, but once you're at the Academy and find a mentor, he or she will naturally help you. If your talent is good and become a formal wizard's apprentice, you can also learn better ways of meditation," Mara explained. When he saw Anger ready to leave, he continued, "Not so fast. I called all 3 of you, and I have my reason. I can't teach you, but I can tell you what meditation means to wizards." Mara did not wait for their response. "Now look closely." Mara closed his eyes. No one knew what he was doing, but after 2 or 3 seconds, the wanted scroll on the desk slowly floated into the air, then moved around the room following Mara's guidance. The scroll rolled up, folded, cruised, and dropped like a feather. The kids watched with excitement. They saw a lot of Mara's power these days, but they were still excited about this. When the poster landed slowly, Mara finally opened his eyes. "I did not cast any spells, yet the scroll still fell under my control, denying the rules of nature. Do you know why?" Mara asked. Then he quickly put a hand against his forehead. "Ah, that was silly of me. You don't know about wizards, I shouldn't have asked that." Mara recovered his posture. "I'll make this straight. This is a power brought by meditation. Wizards usually call it spiritual power. The level of your spiritual power determines how efficient you can channel your mana. Mana is a unique power that is created when your body communicates with the world. Usually, only a spiritual power higher than 10 can be used to channel the source of mana and feed it back to yourself, and a higher spiritual power indication improves efficiency. This is where meditation comes into play to improve the efficiency of mana channeling. Next, spiritual power. For most wizards, spiritual power is a medium for channeling mana. However, it has its own effect as well. It can even affect our physical world. Just now, I was using pure spiritual power to move the scroll. You should remember though, that spiritual power is extremely unstable, and meditation is used to construct models and stabilize spiritual power, Mara sighed. He added, there are some special branches among the 3 major arts which require spells that combine spiritual power and mana together. Those spells require extremely deep knowledge, and no one should attempt them before they become formal wizards. Mara explained some cautions and details about meditation before he handed a small booklet to Alan. This is the basic meditation method taught by the Academy, the triangle channeling. Alan, read it and remember everything, then give it to Aline. Mara spoke to Alan, who only gained more confusion today than knowledge. Then Mara looked at Aline. The girl had been turning her eyes everywhere. Remember, it's not allowed to distribute the triangle channeling in private. You two read it and then burn the book. If I ever find out that you give it to someone else, that man will be executed, and you two will receive the death penalty. Aline froze upon hearing Mara's warning. People die this easily. Somehow, Aline began to have a glimpse at the cruelty of the wizarding world. Now, each of you can ask me a question. Get your answer and return to your room. I need to research on a new magic project in the coming days, so don't disturb me unless your lives are threatened. These words are obviously meant for Alan and Aline. As for Anger, Mara had been kind enough to him. Time to return to being strangers. Alan and Aline were always interested in the path of wizardry, but they were too young and had limited knowledge, so they did not give Mara any constructive questions. Aline even annoyed Mara greatly by asking a question about talent, about which Mara already explained several days ago. If he was not trying to be kind towards a girl, he could have slapped her. Alan asked about the difference between white wizards and black wizards. They would know such common sense once they reached the academy. Asking Mara now meant Alan wasted a good chance. It was not a good question, but still better than Aline's, so Mara still explained in detail. Their names sound as if they are separated like good men and bad men. Essentially, they have no difference. The definition of black and white is only for apprentices, while formal wizards never name themselves like that. It's only about their different ways of acting. Apprentice wizards call someone white wizards because they deal with everything in a more gentle approach. As for black wizards, they tend to be fierce and cruel, but that's not always the case. A white wizard in a bad mood may blast you to pieces if you happen to walk in front of him at a wrong time. So this black and white definition is only for general cases. There are no differences between them. Once you've become a formal wizard, you can act like a black wizard and change into a white one in the next second, which is totally fine. However, there are differences between wizard groups. For example, the White Coral Floating Island Academy is a moderate organization. Wizards from the academy do not kill apprentices without a reason, they even help apprentices in trouble occasionally. Of course, you must pay for such help later. There are also wizard groups on the Fey continent who believe in the survival of the fittest. To them, apprentices are merely walking research materials. This is why you can consider yourselves extremely lucky for being accepted by the White Coral Floating Island Academy. With Alan's question answered, Mara then looked towards Anger. Anger stood up and bowed politely. My question is, what's the base principle behind casting spells? That's a good question, said Mara as he looked at Anger with approval. He then said, I can't give you an authentic answer with my current knowledge, but I can tell you the rules for casting spells in my view. You can use my views as reference. For wizards, mana is the energy for using spells, but not the most important aspect. The most important point is the knowledge used to construct the spell. You can say that knowledge is everything for wizards. We pursue the root of all, find the answer to all and discover the truth. All knowledge can become eternal miracles with the help of mana. Here's an example. There's a basic cantrip called Canine Nose. It temporarily gives someone a sense of smell as sharp as dogs. To cast the spell, apart from using mana, you also need to understand the structure of dog noses and knowledge about the sense of smell. Additionally, you need to adjust your own nasal cavity beforehand. So, the most important elements for wizards, accumulation of knowledge, creativity, and insight into everything. Chapter 22, Strange Seabird. Mara never showed up in the following days. Aline and Alan began learning the triangle channeling, while Anger immersed himself in John's puzzles. As Mara said, Knowledge was the most important thing to wizards. Anger did not know if what John taught him was useful, but he did know that this knowledge could enlighten him and broaden his view, so he would not be trapped by what he could only see. Anger did not care if the knowledge was useful or not. His quill flowed swiftly on the paper. Sheets filled with formulas and numbers soon became yesterday's draft. Anger would find new ways to solve the puzzles every day. He could think about molecular, atoms, magnetic field. Different angles of view always brought him new surprises. As time passed, Anger could feel that he was getting closer to the correct answer. One day, Anger put down his quill and rubbed his temples. His brain had been running at full capacity for nearly half a month. With more puzzles solved, the final answer approached. There were only 10 more puzzles left. However, his head toiled too much under the constant concentration. He even felt ringing ears and blackened sight this morning. He knew his body was sending himself a warning. Anger was anxious about finding the answer, but he still stopped. He was only 14, a teenager. He would not want something bad to happen to his body during this most important growing stage only to live with regret for the rest of his life. John mentioned that he went seriously ill one time during his youth because of his bad habit. That was why John never grew taller than 165 centimeters. Anger was not sure if John was telling the truth or just finding an excuse. But better to believe the worst, right? Anger yawned. He stretched his arms and straightened his legs. Then he checked the clock on the wall. 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Clocks were rare on the marginalized island or the old Earth. Even the Pat Manor still used hourglasses. However, clocks had already joined everyone's life on the fake continent. Anger flipped open a porthole on the wooden wall. The salty smell of sea instantly came in. The portal was a window of the ship. The cabins on the middle level of the Redbud all had these windows to let fresh air in. The ones at the bottom did not have such luxury though. The sun was strong. The sunlight reflected on the sea's surface dazzled his eyes. Air exchanged between the outside and the narrow room. Anger was fine with the smell. He simply closed his eyes and let his imagination fly wild while enjoying the warm sea breeze. He recalled his sweet childhood, his loving parents, his kind brother, teacher's guidance, and himself a young man roaming in the sea of knowledge day and night. Those memories could always bring a smile to his face. He did not take anything from the Pat Manor since only these memories could accompany him forever. Saving his teacher was not the only reason why Anger decided to follow Mara to the Fey continent and become a wizard. He also had a secret intention to help his family rise. On the old Earth, even apprentice wizards could receive treatment better than any nobles. Mara said that a formal wizard could live at least 500 years and someone who broke through further could go for thousands. Anger never expected to protect his family for that long, however. Allowing his family to stay prosperous for 100 years, within 3 generations, was enough for him. The weather was calm outside, which also calmed Anger's mood greatly. He took out a tea bag from his luggage. It contained the morning dew. Back at the manor, Anger divided the manor's stock of morning dew into 2. He brought a portion with him and gave the rest to Mara. Anger did not really enjoy the bitter taste, but he remembered Mara's words, that the morning dew was a lesser magic plant. Since he was about to step into the mysterious wizard world, drinking the tea might help him, right? Anger sipped the tea with raised eyebrows and his lips curled up. There was no one around, yet his postures, every detail, and his straightened back all showed elegance. The nobleman's quality was already carved deep into his bones. John also taught him poetry and virtue over the years. With that, Anger's temperament also carried a sense of gentleness and grace. Together, they granted Anger an attractive charisma. Some age lines and an adult face would make me better, Anger mumbled to himself as he looked at the mirror. The cup of tea was finished. As usual, the morning dew only presented him with a taste of bitterness and grass. It was not awful, but it was not enjoyable either. As for the effect of magic plants Mara mentioned, that basically had nothing to do with Anger. Tweet, tweet as Anger savored the taste of tea, a bird's cry came from the window, followed by the sound of flapping wings. Anger looked up and saw a strange seabird perched on the windowsill. The bird was about double the size of his palm. Brown and gray feathers, red, sharp talons, orange, pointy beak, and dark green eyes. Those features still belonged to an ordinary seabird, but Anger knew something was strange because the bird was wearing something. It had a tall, white hat on its head and a small bib in blue and white stripes around its neck. There was a pattern on the bib which was shining under the sunlight. Also, Anger was most attracted by the little blue pouch hanging on one side of the bird. It made the bird look like a male pigeon in fairy tales. The bird chirped while staring at Anger with its green eyes as if trying to talk to him. Anger chuckled. When he remembered that he was alone with the bird, his childish curiosity took the best of him again, so he imitated a duck's beak and spoke to the seabird. Tweet, said the bird. Anger smiled, So your name is Tweet? Interesting. Who's your master? He made you look so cool. The bird half closed its eyes and made another tweet in disdain. Anger reached out a slim finger and gave the bird a tap on its tiny head. Come on, I said you looked cool, and you're feeling proud already. The bird looked away and prepared to leave. It then hesitated, and in the end, it stayed and still chirped away as if it was asking for something. Anger did not notice its intention. He still played around with the bird happily, even though he saw a pattern on the seabird's satchel which was the same as the one on its bib. It looked like an emblem. The center was an extremely fat woman with violet, curly hair. She was so fat that the skin on her face hanged in several places. The woman had a pair of bright red lips, a tiny nose, coquettish eye makeup, and a beauty mark on her jaw. She could have been a pretty lady if not for all that extra flesh. As they said, fair skin could hide all blemishes, while all beauties were easily ruined by being fat. A knife and fork were beside the picture, crossed. The emblem looked weird. What did it mean? A family emblem? Then Anger laughed at himself. What kind of family would use this as their emblem? But then what? Anger could not understand. He did not intend to figure it out either. The question was soon forgotten. He knew that curiosity was the foremost virtue for every learner, but he would rather spend his curiosity on pursuing useful truth. Anger noticed that the bird's tiny satchel looked filled up. There must be a lot of stuff in there. He did not reach for it though. He would not allow himself to take something without asking for its owner's permission, even if the owner was a seabird. The bird was still chirping, while Anger could only respond to no avail. It looked frustrated too and began to pace around the windowsill restlessly. Hey, Tweet, what do you need from me? Are you hungry? Thirsty? When hearing Tweet, the bird tried rolling its eyes at Anger. However, upon hearing the rest of the question, it got an idea and nodded rapidly. You're hungry? Clever. You know how to ask for food, said Anger. He took out a pack of bread from his drawer and bit it apart while muttering, Who's your master? How did he train you? You can even answer people's questions. Anger looked towards the outside. There was only the borderless ocean. There's no island around. Maybe a power wielder from the upper level of the Redbud is your owner? Chapter 23, Doom on Ancients. Anger put some breadcrumbs in front of the bird, hoping it would dig in. However, he only received another scorned side glance. Anger thought the bird disliked bread, so he gave it some fruit and jerky slices. The bird still turned its head away. Are you thirsty? The bird nodded its head quickly again. Ah, so that's why. Without much thought, Anger gave the bird a glass of fresh water. Then he received a slap in return. The seabird stretched its wings, knocked the glass away, and returned to the endless sea. What happened next was more unexpected though. The bird returned to his room, circled around the narrow room for a while, and finally stopped in front of Anger's teacup. The cup still contained the remaining morning dew leaves Anger used to make his tea. Aha! Now Anger finally understood. The bird was attracted by morning dew. What was special about morning dew? For now, Anger knew that it was a magic plant. So this seabird was a supernatural creature too? Anger pondered. Maybe one of the supernaturals on the top floor was the bird's owner after all. Only one of those amazing wizards could have created such an extraordinary pet. The bird flapped its wings, pointed at the cup, then pointed at Anger. Anger knew what it meant. He refilled the cup with hot water. This tea brought from an ancient nation called China from another world was said to possess richer taste when served with water for the second time. The seabird was initially disgusted by the second-hand tea, but once the fragrance of tea began to fill the room, it soon became sprightly and flapped its wings as if intoxicated. When the cup was full, the bird did not even wait for the water to cool before it reached into the tea with that beak. There was a loud drinking noise, and the water level went down quickly until there were only leaves left at the bottom. The bird did not seem satisfied, so Anger filled the cup again. He brought a lot of morning dew. Besides, he was going to throw away his leftovers anyway. If the bird wanted it, he could wait. Though it seemed Anger did not have to wait. After consuming several cups, the seabird picked the remaining leaves clean. I think I'll call you cleaner instead since you did a thorough job. Anger did not know what else to say in this situation. Now the bird smiled in content. Those tiny eyes had become the shape of the crescent moon. It did not respond to its new name, but only nodded towards Anger in respect as if showing gratitude for the tea. Next, it reached sideways with its head, took out a small golden card from its pouch and put it in front of Anger. Seeing how Anger did not react, the bird even pushed the card further towards Anger. For me? He finally realized what just happened and picked up the card. Since Anger got its idea, the bird let out another gentle chirp as if saying something. Before Anger could reply though, it dashed out of the window. When Anger looked towards outside again, there were only the usual sky and clouds. The bird was nowhere to be found. Interesting. It even knew how to repay people, said Anger as he shook his head. He then chuckled. Teacher once said you should return people as best as you can for the tiniest kindness. I guess the bird just did it by giving me a card. No longer minding the vanished bird, Anger focused on the golden card in his hand. One side was blank, the other had a picture on it, the same fat lady wearing violet hair, drawn on the bird's bib and pouch. Anger stroked the picture with his fingers. It felt embossed. Looked like the patterns was carved onto the card. Someone used such delicate craftsmanship on his tiny card. There must be a reason. He knew nothing about the picture though, so he would not get the idea behind this no matter how deep that might be. Besides, there was no point in wasting time on the matter. Anger simply put the card away in his pocket and continued enjoying his journey. Listening to the sound of sea waves and the low bellowing of flowing undercurrent, Anger took out a book to read. The title read Idea on Ancients. He found the book in the bookstore at Moonwater City. It mainly contained mythology stories collected by the author from all kinds of places. In other words, the book was just a myth anthology, added with the author's own view, thus the title Idea on Ancients. Anger kept reading until the color of dusk had covered the entire sky. When he finished the book, Anger believed he would have called the book Doom on Ancients rather than Idea on Ancients. Every single god or deity in the book perished in the end, either died trying to save mankind by fighting demons or died due to some other natural reasons. Not one of them enjoyed a happy ending. They were only myths, so nobody knew if those were real. Maybe the so-called gods were only powerful wizards? Common folks were usually terrified or resistant about supernatural power. Maybe perished gods were referring to wizards who left the old earth. Since the old earth had not witnessed any supernatural in a long time, people with good imagination made up all the perished gods to comfort themselves. Anger put down the book, stretched, and checked the weather. He then decided to have dinner for now. Anger knew much about the Redbud during the month. There were more than one dining halls. Almost every floor had one. Also, one could tell the social classes of people eating in these halls according to the decoration and the food in these places. The dining hall on the top floor of the Redbud was the most luxurious one. Only apprentice wizards were accepted there. Anger heard that a formal wizard was staying on this ship, though he was not sure if this was real. There were about several dozens of talents like himself as well. They were found from various continents by the guides from the three major wizard organizations, the White Coral Floating Island Academy, the Gravity Forest and the Tower of Hurricane. They were staying at the mid-tier on the Redbud who used the White Flounder restaurant on the middle floor. The sailors and other handymen used the Alfalfa restaurant on the bottom floor. Anger came to the White Flounder restaurant just at dinner time. There were a lot of people. Now that no one was proud of being a talent anymore, they simply took their plates and found a seat while letting the chefs decide what to eat. It did not matter whether you were a blue blood or rich man. Here, everyone was only a rookie about to step onto the path of wizardry. Rookies should act like rookies. They could boast about their achievement after they actually made any. Anger always followed his teacher's advice of being neutral. He would not make himself stand out. With that mindset, Anger copied everyone's action, took a plate from the chef with roast fish and bread in it, with his head lowered. He collected some vegetable and winter fruits from another section, fetched a bowl of potato scallop soup with mashed garlic and took a seat near the window on one side of the hall. He had been eating roast fish for half a month now. He really missed his teacher's Chinese food. Thinking about how he would not find his favorite food for many years, Anger's face quickly darkened. If I knew I would live alone earlier, I'd have learned cooking from teacher from the start. Anger sighed in his mind even though he still kept his noble politeness on the outside. The half-shut wooden door kept squeaking with people going in and out. Anger could see the door well from his position. A young man wearing silver and gray lace shirt pushed the door open and walked into the hall with slow, somewhat unpleasant steps. Anger had been staying low profile ever since he was on the ship. In this cruel wizarding world, his beloved brother was no longer here to protect him. He had to be modest to find peace. That was why he never interacted with anyone apart from Alan and Aline during the entire month. While Aline and Alan tried their best to expand their social network, Anger only kept himself to his studies and puzzles. Solitary he might be, Anger still recognized this man full of nobility and womanish temperament, which only meant how famous the man was on this ship. Dove Silver Heron, the third successor of the Silver Heron royal family from the Central Empire on the Land of Revelation. Chapter 24, The Cold Reality Compared to the Old Earth. The Land of Revelation could be considered a real continent while the Old Earth was only a remote, marginalized island. The Land of Revelation was still far from Fey Continent when it came to importance, but at least wizards still considered the place worthwhile. Dove was an exchange student appointed by the Silver Heron Royal Wizard Group. He was going to the Tower of Hurricane at the south of Fey Continent to exchange study. At least Dove said those himself. However, every talent on the ship knew the fact that this Silver Heron Royal Wizard group was merely created by apprentice wizards from the Tower of Hurricane who could not break through into formal wizards after they left their mentors. Thanks to the relationships they previously had in the Tower of Hurricane, they could earn themselves some quota for recommended talents. The exchange student was complete nonsense. An organization with thousands of years of history and groups of formal wizards would exchange students with an apprentice group built by weaklings? Seriously? Everyone knew, but no one spoke that out, for they would not dare to offend Dove. They were weak, but they were still supernaturals. Rumor said that there was an apprentice in the Silver Heron Royal Wizard group who was very close to a formal wizard. This man returned to the Central Empire in disappointment because he could not find his destiny for a breakthrough. The relationship, added by Central Empire's great financial resources, was enough reason for everyone to avoid offending Dove. He might be an arrogant, spoiled playboy, but people around him could only bear with it. When Dove stepped into the dining hall, conversations quickly quieted down. Thanks to the sudden silence, Anger heard someone whispering nearby. Huh? Did he come alone? Where are his lackeys? Dove heard it too. He glared at the speaker with a violent expression and laughed out when he saw his target get back to his meal with a terrified expression. However, Dove's arrogance immediately vanished once he left the crowd. He tried to find his men just now. All rooms were shut. No idea where they went. Bastards, Dove cursed under his breath. Without his servants, he had to fetch his meal on his own. He was used to his self-ego among talented people. When he heard about the background of the Redbud, he too did not find any trouble with the chefs. Instead, he took his meal carefully and sat somewhere vacant. Anger only glanced at Dove when he came in and never paid any attention to him again. Anger was thinking about something though. He was sure he heard the door panel clicking twice when Dove came, but Dove was the only one there. Maybe he just heard things because he was too tired doing his puzzles. Thanks to John, Anger learned to be sharp about his surroundings. This was not for avoiding trouble, but for capturing details in the environmental reality so he could gain inspiration and opportunity from everything. Simply put, the sharp sense was for refining his own knowledge. Anger was always confident in his instinct to capture tiny details, but the instinct seemed a bit off today. Shaking his head, Anger gave up on wondering about the strange matter. It was not his problem, and it was not worth the time. Anger knew how to enjoy a good meal. He sometimes even lost himself in the process. However, he needed a good meal first. What he was having now could only be considered filling. Acceptable, yet not enjoyable. As he ate his fill, Anger's mind wandered off again to his unsolved calculations. Someone not far screamed, interrupting Anger's roaming mind. Ugh! Who the FCK are you? Show yourself! A high-pitched male voice pierced the air in the entire dining hall, followed by the noise of shattering plates. Anger frowned and looked towards the ruckus. The arrogant third prince from the Central Empire now had stains all over himself. He grasped his neck with one hand. Blood was running between his fingers. He was waving the tablecloth using his other hand, breaking the porcelain dinnerware everywhere. Dove was baring his teeth at the air like an angered pit bull, to no avail. There was no one around 20 meters of him. He's mad again? Hey wait, he's bleeding? There's a knife wound on his neck. Someone muttered, but nobody was there. Don't tell me the place is haunted. All talents in the hall talked, but not a man went there to help Dove. Apart from his terrible temper, people were terrified of the strange situation as well. The blood is coming out fast, but not to the extent of gushing out. Maybe a cut vein, said Anger. He glanced around and spoke to himself, even if it's only a vein, judging from the blood flow, he'll be dead without aid within the next 10 minutes. A blade cut, but no one was holding a blade. Anger looked around Dove without seeing anyone. Then he recalled hearing the second door click just now. Interesting. Someone invisible? An apprentice? Or just another talent? Anger inclined to the latter. An apprentice wizard would not have to do it concealed, and that one hit would have killed Dove. Dove was still rampaging when Anger measured the situation. As time passed, Dove's yelling became weaker. He suddenly heard something and grabbed a wine bottle before hurling it against a window southeast of him. The spilled dark red wine did not hang on to the wooden wall as everyone expected. It stopped in midair about 5 meters in front of the wall. The wine slowly flowed downward, exposing a red human figure. Someone's over there. He's invisible. A man yelled while pointing to the soaked figure. Is that a wizard? You can't be serious. A mighty wizard will never come and assassinate the likes of us in this way. They just need a glance and will die the most painful death, sneered someone. Wait a minute, and we'll see him, said one of the talents. He pointed towards the assailant. Mr. Como and mentioned these spells. There are the Phantom Shift which cloaks people under an illusion, the Dimension Cloak which lets someone hide in another space, and a spell that deceives your eyes using light and shade. The first and second are only available to formal wizards, and there's only one cantrip that can make you invisible, Optic Confusion. Mr. Komoan was the guide from the wizard organization, Gravity Forest. He was a level 2 apprentice wizard. The caster of Optic Confusion will be exposed if something touches him. Of course, he might be using some kind of alchemy item too. But even Mr. Komoan couldn't easily afford those things. When he finished talking, the invisible man soaked in wine already showed up. Anger looked at him with a raised eyebrow. A young man wearing tattered cloth, and a handsome face, which was now filled with a rebellious emotion. Anger did not know this man, but his clothing and details in his movement were enough to tell Anger that he was from a poor family. The poor versus a rich noble. The man looked at the bleeding dove with an unyielding delight. He then let out a bloodthirsty grin, satisfied by his revenge. The once arrogant prince looked at the man with disbelief and hatred. There was also regret behind his angered expression. Nice. The story behind these guys is sure to keep Mana talking for a whole year. Anger recalled the moment when he heard head-maid Mana gossiping about the infamous, cheating Waterford noble scum. Anger shook his head and prepared to leave the dining hall. He did not have time for such outdated plots. When he stood up, a middle-aged noble lady with silver hair appeared on the scene. Anger heard about the elegant lady before. She was Lady Merlin, a level 3 apprentice wizard stationed on the Redbud. She was from Tower of Hurricane. Since Lady Merlin was here, the poor young man's fate should be clear. Wait. What? Anger watched in surprise as Lady Merlin stepped to the center while completely oblivious of the dying dove lying on the ground. She looked at the young assailant up and down with delight on her face instead. She waved a hand and all taints on the young man's body instantly vanished. What's your name? Lady Merlin asked him. Easley, Lady Merlin, ma'am. My name is Easley, said the young man as he responded politely. He did not say his family name because he did not have one. A family name represented family inheritance. He was an orphan and Easley was the name of a hound belonged to a nobleman he once served. To get himself a name, he fought with the hound for his life until he finally snapped the beast's neck. That was when the noble gave the name Easley to him. Easley. Good, I'll remember that. You're good. You channeled your mana pool very quickly. Maybe your spiritual power talent is beyond 20? Lady Merlin reached out a hand and put it on Easley's forehead. As I predicted, you were born with a spiritual power of 23. It will help you save much time. You will train 10 times faster than ordinary talents. No wonder you can channel your mana so quickly, said Lady Merlin. She smiled and spoke to the young man. I only told you the principle of optic confusion half a month ago, and you can already cast it. This means you understand the knowledge of light and shadow well. Splendid. Truly splendid. Remember, all spells are based on a wizard's knowledge and mana. They are mutually important. You have stepped into the gate of an apprentice wizard. Move to the top floor from now on. With that, Lady Merlin left without looking back. Dove, on the other hand, was taking his last breath on the ground now. As Lady Merlin's figure disappeared from the dining hall, Dove's expression changed from despair to stiffness. No one helped. His body turned cold under everyone's indifferent gaze. Easley, the killer, looked at the corpse on the ground. He then grinned and left the room as well. No one complained. No one stopped him. At least Easley made a difference on this ship and became someone who could dominate over another's life. Anger left the hall in silence. Now he truly understood that there was no black and white in the wizarding world. Justice or evil did not mean a thing to them. The Silver Heron Royal Wizard Group belonged to the same organization as Lady Merlin. Even then, Lady Merlin did not care about Dove, not even a glance. This completely explained how cruel wizards could be towards common people. After this incident, Anger tried even harder to conceal his presence. Without protection, Death's scythe was constantly placed against his own neck. This was a reality, the uncovered, brutal reality in the world of wizards. Chapter 25, Cloud Whale. Anger went back to his room to continue with John's puzzles. He even missed several meals. In the following 10 days or so, Anger heard about the story between Easley and Dove. A nobleman humiliated a young girl to death. The girl's childhood friend rose up in anger, lived a hard life while bearing the great hatred in mind, and finally changed his fate and killed the nobleman by his own hand. That was a lot of déjà vu, yet very acceptable. The laws were against the poor, and nobles were free to do whatever they like. Justice was only brought up when people were from the same class. Anger actually sympathized easily upon hearing the story. Anger was a noble himself, but he always received education from the earth and did not consider his class as important. However, another story he heard next changed his attitude towards Easley. Dove went to the dining hall alone that day, because Easley had already slaughtered every single one of Dove's followers. Some of the victims were smaller families from the Central Empire who clung to big families for protection, Some were new followers Dove recruited on the ship, some were even pretty girls or talented people Dove brought here by force. The second and third types of people did not even have anything to do with Easley, and several of them were just like Easley himself. Yet Easley still killed all of them. Anger did not like such cruelty. Though he did not develop hatred towards Easley, only less sympathy, more caution. The wizarding world was even more brutal than he expected. Time went by. The Redbud passed the Whalebone Sea peacefully and moved into the most dangerous area in Rumor's Devil's Water. This place was full of vicious pirates, giant sea monsters, and strange weathers. Some even said there were ghost ships here. For civilian ships, the Devil's Water was a natural barrier that could not be crossed. However, the Redbud was protected by wizards who could repel evil. When the ship was halfway across the Devil's Water, Aline, who had been away from people for nearly half a month, came to Anger's room. Her face was pale, and her expression down. Those usual energies around her were nowhere to be seen. She came to the room and slumped onto a bench near the window. "Brother Pat. I'm so dumb. I don't know who can help me. My brother already felt his spiritual power the day before yesterday, but me. My meditation did nothing over an entire month. I can't find a single trace of spiritual power, let alone feeling any mana." Aline talked about her meditation training during the month without minding whether Anger was listening. As she spoke, her nose blushed, and tears appeared around the corners of her eyes. She seemed quite aggrieved about this. Anger let out a sigh. He did not know how to comfort girls, so all he could say was, "You will make it. Only need some time." That made Aline cry harder. Not only Alan, but someone from a poor class like Easley had already shown their great talent. Compared to them, Aline could not control her sadness. She even began complaining about how boring meditation was and all kinds of emotions were interfering with her training. But she still kept her reason by not spilling out triangle channeling. However, Anger still learned a lot from her words, about the possible problems during meditation training. When she finished pouring out her feelings, Aline wiped away her tears and blushed in embarrassment. She was just venting out her emotions at Anger like talking to a tree. Now she was done, she felt very unladylike. Would Anger see her as a spoiled girl? There was silence. Aline pinched her hands with uneasiness and tried to think about how to get rid of the atmosphere. It would be best if Anger could forget what she just did. "Hey, Brother Pat, what are you writing about?" Aline looked at the piles of papers filled with characters on the desk and asked in curiosity. She saw those characters before, in the stilt house back at the Pat Manor. They were called something like Hansi. "My diary. All I did these days were reading and sleeping. I need something to pass the time." Anger gave her a small lie. He was doing puzzles, but that would be too complicated to explain, and he might give away his teacher's secrets. Thank goodness that Anger and John were the only ones in this world who could read Chinese, and he did not need to worry about his lie being found out. Aline watched the papers for some more and realized she really could not understand any, so she simply gave up. Time to find other topics to ease up the mood. What she talked about next was only chit-chats among noble women, and Anger grew bored quickly. Before he could stop Aline, however, the ship shook violently. The pair did not panic. Instead, they quickly grabbed onto the iron rails on the wall to steady themselves. A ship on the sea was sure to run into some big waves and strong winds. Not mentioning that they were currently on Devil's Water, where the most strange weathers could be found, so the occasional swings and shakes no longer surprised them. This was also why Anger only kept some papers and quills on his desk. The shake lasted 5 minutes. A small one, compared to what they experienced since the beginning of their trip. Thanks to the sudden rough ride, they forgot about the embarrassment just now. Aline tidied her messed up hair, while Anger pulled down his short shirt to cover his exposed stomach. They exchanged a smile. The peace did not last long. Before they could say anything else, a lot of footsteps came from the ceiling above them. They were hurried and chaotic as if many people were running around. "What's going on up there?" they both asked in unison. Aline leaned over the window to check the outside. Then she yelled, "Brother Anger, look! Quick!" Anger listened and joined her. The outside was dark. A giant creature had blocked the vast sky. Anger tried to see what it was, but it was so big, and he could not make out which side was the head and which was tail. Anger felt a sudden terror, and quickly said to Aline, "Let's go outside." If such a giant creature decided to attack the Redbud, staying inside the cabin would ensure a faster death. Aline knew this too, so she followed behind Anger without any hesitation. When they left the room, they saw all the other doors were open. Everyone was running towards the deck, either nervous or terrified. When they reached the deck, they saw it was already full of people. Talents, handymen, sailors. They all joined their own groups to look at the large creature floating in the sky. Anger also noticed that most talents were worried or scared, But sailors and handymen working on the Redbud were mostly amused, without any trace of fear in their expressions. Anger calmed down a bit. Since sailors who had been working on the ship for many years were not afraid of the situation, the giant creature must be harmless to them. With that in mind, Anger put away his fear and carefully inspected the large creature in the sky. He could not get a good look of it back in the cabin. Now he could do it on the deck. It was a floating, giant whale at least 200 meters in length. The pair of fins on its sides were like wings, each flap could create some gust. That wave earlier must have been caused by the strong wind. The whale's eyes looked like sapphires which reflected a blurring gleam like those reflected by sea waves. A single horn stood atop of its streamlined forehead which appeared as if surrounded by the clouds. So the legendary cloud whale lives in the Devil's Water. Someone exclaimed. A cloud whale is usually a gentle creature. However, we should be prepared for the worst, said someone else. Not far from the crowd, the second in command of the Redbud gave orders to the sailors, then looked at the three figures standing behind him. "Milord. We need to activate Mirror Veil on the Redbud. Please assist," said the vice captain in knight armor. He half knelt before the three lords. The lords were escorts from the three major wizard organizations who had been stationed on the Redbud. One woman, and two men. The woman was wearing graceful attire, Lady Merlin, the level 3 apprentice wizard from the Tower of Hurricane, whom Anger saw the other day. One of the two males was a young man who possessed a handsome look. Black hair, hazel pupils, soft leather armor. A level 2 apprentice wizard from the Gravity Forest, Coma 1. The third one was an elder wearing gray hair and gray beard, yet full of energy in his eyes. The escort from White Coral Floating Island Academy, a level 3 apprentice wizard, Mr. Florent. An old man in a black robe and another young man were standing behind Florent. When Aline saw them, she quickly brightened up and began waving her hand towards them. She had not seen Mara and Alan in a long time. Chapter 26, The Blood Witch. Aline dragged Anger towards Mara. Anger felt awkward at first, but when he saw no sign of disapproval in Mara's expression, he slowly joined Aline. "Grandpa, and brother. You came too." Aline rushed over to hug Mara. Mara greeted Aline with a smile. "Wait, Lady Merlin is about to channel mana into the Nightmare Stone. You better keep your distance." The three kids nodded and followed Mara until they were away from the escorts. The graceful escort in elegant formal dress, Lady Merlin, walked to the front of the ship with slender steps. Under everyone's gaze, she floated the figurehead statue into the air using an unknown power and slowly put it in front of herself. The figurehead of the Redbud was a praying maiden wearing gauze robe. It left Anger with a deep impression when Anger first saw it because he felt something mysterious from the gem embedded on the forehead of the statue. However, he was not a supernatural yet, so the faint feeling was all he could get. Now, what Lady Merlin was casting finally confirmed Anger's question on that day. The pale crimson gem on the maiden's forehead was a supernatural item and an extraordinary magic crystal at that. It was called the Nightmare Stone. As Lady Merlin used her magic to control the Nightmare Stone, Mara began explaining the item to the kids. Nobody knew where the Nightmare Stones came from, even though it was rumored that there was something to do with another plane. The stones were extremely rare and could be used to create illusions without using magic formulas. It was considered a priceless artifact used in illusions of the occult art. An ordinary Nightmare Stone the size of a sand drop could create an area of illusion covering dozens of meters. The Nightmare Stone on the praying maiden statue was as big as a toddler's fist, and could easily cover a space that extended for half a kilometer under an illusion. Sweat drops came down from Lady Merlin's forehead. A visible wave like water ripples covered the entire ship. Lady Merlin let out a sigh in the end, waved her hands, and returned the statue to its original position. She looked a bit exhausted. The mirror veil was deployed. "The cloud whale won't break the illusion as long as we don't attack it first," said Lady Merlin. She walked back, limping a little. Activating a Nightmare Stone required an awfully large amount of mana. "Return to your work. You were right, the cloud whale has a gentle nature and will not seek destruction for no reason. We're fine with the protection of Mirror Veil," said Lady Merlin. She waved a hand at the second captain to ask him to go away. When Lady Merlin returned to the platform, the second captain had already ordered his sailors to disperse the onlookers. Most people had left the deck, and talents had returned to their own rooms. Como and from the Gravity Forest looked at the cloud whale in the sky for quite a while. With a passionate expression, he said, "The cloud whale can manipulate the power of the sea, and exchange air around it using its air sac to fly in the sky. The creature is one of the best mounts for traversing the ocean. If only I could." He did not finish his words, but his desire towards the cloud whale was obvious enough. Lady Merlin and Flora did not say anything. A cloud whale was as strong as a formal wizard. Apprentices like them would better spend more time meditating than wasting time thinking about the impossible. Look. Something's coming down the sky. A sailor on the deck suddenly shouted. That made everyone still on the deck raise their heads to look. About a kilometer up in the sky, a crimson dot slowly dropped down, like a feather falling in the wind. No matter how long it dropped, it only turned in place without going into another direction. Also, there was no doubt that the crimson dot was coming towards the red bud. It was still far, so the kids could not make out what that was. On the other hand, the 4 apprentice wizards had already begun to use their farsight spells. Various colors shined over their eyes. It's a human. Komo-an yelled. A woman in red, Mara said. He saw more details compared to Komo-an. An umbrella? That was the only thing Lady Merlin could say after hesitating for a while, but it already showed that her observation was even better. The woman was falling like a feather because of a beautifully crafted umbrella. The last one to comment was Florent. He had been wearing a serious look, and his gray hair and beard flowed upwards despite gravity. A stern look appeared on his once kind expression. When looking carefully enough, one could also find a bit of terror in it. It's Flora, said Florent. His voice had trembled when he spoke. Flora? Which Flora? Komo-an clearly did not understand. Lady Merlin seemed to realize something. Her pupil shrunk and she pointed towards the red dot with a shaking finger. You mean, Flora the Blood Witch? Florent nodded slowly and grimly. Everyone fell into silence. The 3 kids did not make any sound either since the lords and ladies were acting like this. Anger noticed that all the apprentice wizards seemed shocked, so whoever was coming was surely someone special. Anger already witnessed the cruelty of the wizarding world. He feared that the visitor might suddenly attack them out of the blue, so he slowly dragged Alan and Aline away. In the end, the kids leaned against the door leading into the lookout room. Mara recovered from his initial shock. He quickly glanced at the kids, pushed the door open, and urged the children into the lookout room. Hide. Do not make a sound. Flora is a formal wizard, and a black one. Those people usually do not care the life and death of common people, but she won't harm you as long as you stay out of her sight, Mara warned the kids with seriousness and painful expression. He then closed the door. Mara joined Florent in a shaken mood. He was telling the truth. Formal wizards would never kill common ones for no reason, not because they were kind, but because their lifestyle was too far away from common folks. Would someone chase after an ant on the street? No. Even apprentice wizards were just like ordinary people in the eyes of formal wizards, but they had to stay here. They were the only strength on this ship. Someone had to welcome this formal wizard. More importantly, that was Flora. A wizard who was famous for her bloodlust in the entire southern region. Mara felt his legs shaking. Lady Flora was on top of the cloud whale, which means the creature could have been that man's mount. Lady Merlin addressed the formal wizard in a respectful way, even if she knew that Flora was actually younger than herself. A lot younger. They used Eagle Eye spell to check the cloud whale again. As expected, they saw something else. A group of demon falcons was circling around the whale's back. Demon falcons were originally predator eagles from Arctic areas. They became demon falcons once made into scout avatars by wizards. Demon falcons could not survive on the sea because they must find replenishment on the ground every day, and of course, they could not do that here. So someone must have been feeding them, and considering their position, that feeding place should be on the back of the whale. A demon falcon was that man's favorite familiar. Realizing that, indescribable fear climbed onto everyone's face. If that man is hostile against the Redbud, I'm afraid that even Lord Sabbath won't stand a chance, said Komo-an. He had completely given up his idea towards the cloud whale. He did not even dare to think about it anymore. Chapter 27, The Phantom Master. Hee. Look at that, such a big nightmare stone. It's my lucky day. A voice suddenly reached everyone's ears on the Redbud. It sounded like a child about the age of 7, only without the childishness. It was strangely charming. Anger saw the deck outside getting restless. A sailor exclaimed, impossible. The mirror veil failed. Looked like Flora, the Blood Witch, who could put fear into the hearts of all apprentice wizards, had already descended to the ship. Anger tried to peek out of the window. Before he could stand up, Aline dragged him back firmly. She was shaking her head with tears in her eyes. She kept silent, but she definitely meant to say something like, don't. You'll die. Alan was holding on to Anger's sleeve as well, completely terrified. Anger curled his lips. Cowards. What he did not know was that when Flora floated past the mirror veil barrier created by the nightmare stone, a magic current began shifting in the air like water waves. All common people on the ship were repressed breathless by the aura. The aura sowed the emotion of fear and escape into the minds of them. This should be the effect of mirror veil, but since the spell was broken, such effect dispersed into the air, and small volume had seeped into the bodies of ordinary people. The mirror veil was only an inferior spell cast by an apprentice, but to common folks, Even the weakest supernatural aura seemed like an imposing mountain to them. This was why Alan and Aline were getting an indescribable fear. Several sailors even leaped over the ship rails and joined the bottomless devil's water. Anger, however, was not affected by the aura. The reason was yet unknown. As Anger silently complained about the cowardice of Alan and Aline, someone let out an angry yell outside. "Stop it. Flora, you should know that taking the Nightmare Stone means defiance towards the floating mech city?" "Floating mech city? Hee hee. I was wondering what kind of rich man was behind this. So this is your ship. Ah, I see, 3 groups of random wanderers. This is a guide ship. Pity, I don't smell blood at all. Such kind of ship will only find apprentices as soft and weak as you lot." Anger, the reserved student of a wanderer group, wiped some sweat drops from his forehead. As the discussion went on, Anger quickly collated the information he could get. The one talking against Flora was obviously not from the 3 major wizard groups. There was no way a mere apprentice would dare to oppose a formal wizard. When Flora called them random wanderers, all they could do was to nod. Only a formal wizard of the same level could talk to Flora like that. The floating mech city, Anger spoke in his mind. Mara mentioned that someone powerful was behind the Redbud. That must be why the ship could sail on dangerous waters without worry. I heard there was a formal wizard on the ship, so the one talking to Flora must be him, a wizard from the floating mech city. Everyone on the scene was struggling to breathe right now. Anger was the only one free enough to think about this. The discussion outside faded. It seemed Flora and the wizard on the Redbud reached an agreement. They left before Anger could hear anything. When Anger finally stood up to the window to look, he saw 2 figures flying towards the cloud whale. One of them was a bulky male. He must be the wizard from the flying city. Of course, the other smaller woman wearing a long, red dress, black veil and a delicate umbrella must be Flora. As he looked carefully, Anger felt as if a black shadow was following just behind Flora. Maybe he was just seeing things? Before he could think again, the other 2 kids beside him began to scream. Alan and Aline knew that the danger had gone. They had been holding back, but now they finally fully released their fears by screaming out loud. Anger rubbed his temples and took out a silk handkerchief from his skirt. He began comforting the kids in a low voice while suppressing his urge to leave right away. The door of the lookout room was pushed open. Mara walked in with a pale expression, frowning. He seemed worried. Looking at how Anger was trying to comfort the other kids, Mara's expression towards Anger became gentler. Is she gone, Grandpa?" Aline sobbed. Mara nodded. He did not explain about Flora, and only stroked Aline's hair to soothe her. When Alan and Aline stopped crying, Mara led the children away. Aline asked carefully, "Grandfather, why did the wizard come here?" Mara shook his head. "We'd better not think about what those great wizards are up to." Upon entering the cabin, Mara took Alan and Aline away to inspect their training on triangle channeling. Anger quietly returned to his own room after saying goodbye. While on his way, Anger kept scratching on his back. He felt itchy all of a sudden. The itchy area was exactly where the poker queen cut Anger using her nails when Anger escaped from the strange world during his talent test. On that day, Anger checked himself in front of a mirror and saw nothing where he was hurt. There was no wound. But why did he feel itchy now? He reached for his back and still did not get anything. His skin back there was smooth as usual. After scratching a bit more, the feeling stopped. Anger thought it must be some kind of bug bite. With that in mind, he decided to take a bath in the bathhouse tonight. Meanwhile, on top of the cloud whale, a miniature manor like a ranch was constructed on the vast back of the whale. There were tents of different sizes inside the manor. A giant, beautiful one with a round roof stood in the center. Inside the tent, the bulky man from the Redbud, a formal wizard from floating mech city, Mad Bear Sabat, was speaking to a slim, middle-aged man. The moniker Mad Bear was not really worthy since Sabat had been talking to the man with the utmost care and manner, whereas the slim man was not even facing him. The middle-aged man was wearing a black tailcoat, white, lace shirt and a top hat. He had green, curly hair and a tender, cultured face. He appeared to be an educated noble. No one would believe that this elegant man once made himself known and feared upon the entire southern region all by himself. A level 2 wizard, Phantom Master Sunders. Sunders obviously was not even paying attention to Sabat. He was watching an ongoing experiment on one side through his gold-rimmed monocle. Smoke was rising from his hand, which showed various illusions. Sabat only took a small peek, and his eyes instantly ached, so he never dared to raise his head again. Sabat continued. Barbie's restaurant doesn't have a fixed location. We have been traveling on the Devil's Water for a couple of weeks, and we didn't see Lord Griea's presence on our ocean locator. Sunders crowned the illusion in his palm like popping a bubble. Then he turned around to look at Sabat. It's natural you can't find Barbie's restaurant now. Griea loves hide and seek. Well, she's a gourmet wizard, But she enjoys that iffy stuff loved by prophets. We need some hard luck to find her. Sundar shook his head. He smiled and said, "Welp, Mr. Sabat, if you have time, I'll leave it to you." Sabat froze, then he looked up at Sundars, only to see a half-smile. "What? You have a question?" Flora asked. She was sitting on a high bench nearby, without wearing shoes. Her bared feet were swaying in rhythms, in a carefree manner. When she spoke, however, the brief cold look in her eyes terrified Sabat deep to his heart. "No. Of course, I'll do it. Gladly. I'll ask the captain of the Redbud to patrol the surrounding waters and look for Barbie's restaurant until we find it." Sabat could only agree in the end since the situation was beyond him now. He might be from the floating mech city, but that would not help him right away, so he could only move along and see. Sending the talents back to the south was not an urgent task anyway. Why Sundars was looking for Barbie's restaurant was none of his business. At least the Redbud would be safe before they could actually find the restaurant. When Sabat left, Flora muttered in a low voice, "He's smart enough. Or else." Sundars only shook his head without speaking. He returned his attention back to his experiment. Suddenly, he frowned and looked towards outside. "Huh? What is it, teacher?" Flora asked. Sundars did not answer, but a doubt already emerged in his mind. Strange. Why did I feel something from the nightmare realm? Sundars looked down and thought, could it be that an unknown passage to the nightmare realm is hidden in Devil's Water? If this is true. Joy briefly went past Sundars' expression. He closed his eyes to carefully get a feeling about the aura, which was almost from the same origin as him. After a while, he reopened his eyes. More doubt had replaced his joyful expression. The aura from the nightmare realm vanished quickly. He could not sense anything now. Chapter 28, Sundars. Maybe the nightmare stone on that ship gave out an origin reaction and connected to the nightmare realm by accident because of the space particles have a similar frequency? Sundars pondered. Such a rare coincidence happened before. If two planes overlapped with each other and it was not carved out using great magic, it could only be a coincidence. Sundars' joy gradually vanished. Finding a fixed entrance to the nightmare realm meant he no longer needed to find Griia. Sundars had been alive for hundreds of years. He quickly recovered his temperament and disregarded the nightmare realm more he sensed. Seeing how Sundars did not answer, Flora did not push for an answer. She had been his student for longer than anyone else, so she knew that nobody could get an answer when Sundars preferred not to tell. A black owl flew into the tent, circled around, and landed on Flora's shoulder. A visible air ripple came out of the owl's beak. Flora analyzed the message contained in the ripple, then grinned. "Teacher, Isa said that the death match in Chamber 4 has ended. The winner is Balba." Isa was the name of the black owl, Flora's favorite alchemy familiar. "Oh?" Sundars glanced towards the southwest carelessly. His eyes contained a strange magic ripple. To him, something that was far away could be seen easily from here. Chamber 4 was a giant, square, sealed-off house. A bald young man with dark brown, almost black skin, wearing nothing on the upper half was now standing on top of a heap made from human corpses. A red gleam shone in his eyes, ancient totems with a fluorescent blue color slowly spread on his muscular body. Just like the other wizard organizations, the one Sundars was in Brute Cavern also scouted for talented apprentices across the world when the sea unfroze. However, they used an approach which was way less peaceful compared to the Redbud. They arranged all talents into various chambers to join death matches. The final survivors were considered the best among the best, and only these people would become new apprentices of the Brute Cavern. The bald man in Chamber 4 was the sole survivor in his chamber. Sundars showed a gentle smile and a thoughtful look. I didn't expect the winner to be a cross between a human and an otherworldly brute. He's not a real human from this world after all. Without enough strength, the world consciousness will get rid of him sooner or later, unless we banish him to another plane," said Flora. She was also observing the corpse mountain and a survivor panting on it, using a similar vision spell. "Teacher, what should we do about him? The way of wizard calls for truth and the ultimate reason in the universe. We bend the rules using our own knowledge. Such great heart is not to be considered alongside those petty abilities in other places. The otherworldly creatures have been drooling over wizardry just because it can be used by them as well," said Sundars. He paused a little before continuing. "We may already know the background of this hybrid, but we can't exclude the possibility that a powerful being from another plane tampered with his bloodline. It's almost impossible for him to be a spy, but we can't ignore that. Once we return, keep an eye on him for a while. If you see any abnormality, kill him immediately. If he proves to be harmless." Sundars grinned. He then said, "Give him training on the bloodline art. When he fused with the bloodline, make him into a puppet avatar. Spy or not, the young man's fate would be cruel, just because half of his bloodline came from another plane. To wizards, an otherworldly creature who came into the wizarding world by abnormal means either became slave or research material in wizards' hands or returned to dust as bones because of the world's consciousness. The other 8 chambers witnessed their winners as well. Apart from the one in Chamber 4, we Brute Cavern only found 8 talents this year. Flora feigned a sigh, pretending to be troubled. Less than 10. Geez. Those infidels are going to chatter again, about revoking our Death Chamber recruitment or whatnot. Sunders only smiled, don't mind them. Those people should know that if we use the same mass recruitment method like the Redbud, the Brute Cavern would have already fallen out of the top 10 in the southern region. Only a battle for life would make someone understand the rules of the wizarding world. Flora made a sourpuss face, whatever. Hey teacher, when you find Barbie's restaurant, just drag Greia away with us so we don't have to go find her every time we need locations. This is so tiring. Sunders only shook his head with a smile. Greia was not much of a fighter, but she created all sorts of strange spells. If he personally confronted her, he might win, but he certainly could not capture her alive. Sigh. If I had not sealed the Hemi passage on me because of my desire for a better level back in the years, I would have. Sunders exclaimed inside his mind. It was another hazy night. Hurricane and storm created a waterfall outside without any signs of stopping. The surface of the sea shifted in the wind, giant waves swayed the Redbud back and forth like a cradle out of control. Anger did not get any sleep for the entire night because all he could do was trying to steady himself until the sea calmed down under the sunlight the next day. Anger dragged himself to his bed using his toiled limbs and finally fell into a deep sleep while still carrying a feeling of weightlessness. The sleep lasted until the moon hung high in the sky. As Anger climbed out of bed, he felt poked by the pendant in front of his chest. He took it out from his shirt and looked at the oval, transparent crystal fixed in the middle of the netted metal pendant. The alien eye. Anger watched in silence. It reminded him of his home, his brother, and John, now tens of thousands of kilometers away. He was about 5 months away from home, and he still had not reached the wizard continent. Could he really make it back home after 5 years? With a sigh, Anger put away his troubled thoughts and put the pendant back into his shirt, close to his chest. The glaze sphere accompanied his teacher to this world, and there must be something about it. He needed to keep it safe. Anger continued his redundant life, meals, puzzles, and sleep. Routine. Another week passed. When Anger walked by the dining hall one day, he unintentionally looked at the mercury mirror by the door. Inside the mirror, Anger was no longer himself. The energetic, handsome noble boy had become gloomy. His eyelids were hanging, decorated by dark circles. His lips were dry and chapped, his face pale and dark. Exhaustion and pressure had forced him into this shape in such a short amount of time. He could no longer recall when he had a good laugh last time. He went to the wash basin and planned to calm himself down by putting his face in the cold water. The 5-year promise had led him astray, and those noble manners and politeness carved inside his bones were beginning to crumble. His mind was not right. Yet Anger did not intend to change it, at least not before he solved the puzzles left by teacher. He would keep his spirit tensed up for now. Besides, the Redbud did not have any facilities for relieving stress. The other talents could train meditation. But what could he do, apart from solving puzzles? Chapter 29, A Letter to My Student, Anger. As time went by, Anger's daily routine never changed, but at least his spirit recovered a lot compared to his dejection several days ago. While working on the puzzles, he noticed something strange. The Redbud kept cruising in the same area. Just a while ago, Anger saw a uniquely shaped red reef for the 4th time in the half-month. This was why Anger believed that the Redbud was not planning to leave Devil's Water at all. He once tried asking a pilot, but the man only mumbled something vague without giving him a clear answer. Apparently, the pilot already knew that the Redbud had been staying in the same place, but did not want to talk about it. There must be someone important behind all this, and the pilot either could not explain or did not dare to. Who could manipulate the wheel of the Redbud? There was no doubt, a formal wizard. Reaching that conclusion, Anger decided not to think about the matter for any longer. No matter what the wizard was trying to do, he could not do anything about it. The Redbud was his only foothold on Devil's Water anyway, so Anger's only choice was to get along. He did not enjoy such powerlessness, yet he had to comply. Anger really hoped that someday, he could gain enough strength to protect himself, instead of leaving his own life in the hands of someone else. Today was the 167th day Anger was away from Gru Town, and the last day he worked on his puzzles. Anger carefully opened a red-painted wooden box in his luggage. The box contained one single object, a square-shaped, crystal tablet, smaller than a child's palm, while as thin as insect wings. The crystal tablet was not something from this world. John brought it from the Earth. It only acted as a holographic communication tool back on the Earth. It was made into a watch and sold across the world. The strap of the watch was already worn down during all these years, so John discarded the strap and kept the watch in perfect condition. Anger shut his door and adeptly pressed on the small button located on the bottom right corner of the tablet, the power button. A simple hologram and a set of holographic buttons appeared in the air. A line written in Hanzi was displayed on it, screen locked. Answer the question set by the admin to unlock. Question 100. Rectify the hologram below using the 5-side elaborations, then resolve the final password using Vigoneer cipher according to the spectral alignment. The 100th question was the last one John left Anger. He used to be very cautious about using the tablet before coming to the ship. He had to memorize the questions quickly and put the tablet away in somewhere safe. Now that he had his own private room, he could finally take the device out. Every solved question led him to the next one. Anger used all the knowledge he had learned to find the answers. Chemistry, physics, medicine, mathematics. Sometimes even philosophy. There were a lot of physical constants from the Earth which no longer worked in this world, but John only left him basic applications, and Anger had no problem working them out. Today, he was about to give the final answer. He spent the entire afternoon. When he finally arranged the answer to the last question, his hands froze in place. 9,371,201. This number meant nothing to other people, but Anger understood what it meant. Using the calendar of Goldspank Empire, this was Goldspank year 937, the first day of the month of freezing Earth. Anger's birthday. This is the final answer? Anger entered the digits into the answer box on the display, puzzled. The light shifted on the screen, then a different system message came out. Correct answer detected. Now unlocking the screen. The admin can change the login password from the system menu. The words disappeared, which were then replaced by a clean-looking picture of a vast grassland. There were 2 icons on the upper right of the desktop, a folder, and a text document, named to Anger. John told him about how to operate the smartwatch before, but this was still the first time for Anger to try the actual system himself. With curiosity and some expectation, he gave a gentle tap on the document icon. A second later, an electronic letter was displayed quietly in front of Anger. To my student, Anger, I wonder how long those 100 questions troubled you? And how far away are you from home? For many times, I get the feeling that you have been too hard on yourself. Really, you don't have to spend so much effort on these old bones of mine. I told you that my home was an ancient country with a history of longer than 5,000 years. Of course, that's not really ancient compared to the history here. A poet from a neighboring country with the same long history who made his life into philosophy once said, I leave no trace of wings in the air, but I am glad I have had my flight. My life started on the Earth and would end on a foreign star. It was amazing. The worlds are different, but they both have the same blue sky. My only regret is my family. My poor wife and child. I thought it was only a research trip for several days, oh my. Never thought that was our goodbye forever. To think in another way, my wife and my daughter are the traces in the sky on Earth, telling people that I once existed there. Anger, my student, you are the trace proving that I have lived under this foreign sky. You not only inherited the culture from China, but you will also enkindle the ember in this world. Not I think about it, my wings have left some awesome traces. They crossed different spaces and universes. The people who crossed into other worlds I read about were all talented ones who won themselves great fortune against the locals. As for me, I came here to spread my knowledge. Maybe I'll die earlier than those novel heroes, but I did have a higher purpose. Speaking about the wizarding world, I'd really like to see it. I've been believing that this world is just as dull as the Earth, and man, how it surprised me with such a mystery. Although, perhaps I no longer have the time to see it for myself. Such a pity. I cannot see it, but you still can. I hope that Anger, my student, would walk on the path of a wizard till the end. Like every scholar who is faithful to his subject, use concepts as a singular point and ignite the new universe with your knowledge. You have done 100 questions, now I can give you a new one. Compose an essay that explains all truths throughout the wizarding world. Will you do it? Apart from this, I write this letter to tell you that you should use all the knowledge you learned from me, use it well. Some of the physical constants are off in this world, but for a scholar, the process of finding a result is just as important as the result itself. I've already told you the way of thinking, now it's up to you to find a path that suits you best. Oh, if I predicted right, you should be on the sea by now. You can't find much entertainment out there, so I put something in this smart chip, as my last gift for you. Hope you like them. John, finishing the letter, Anger stayed silent for a long time. He closed his eyes and clenched his fists. He felt sad all of a sudden. He could not imagine what John was feeling when he wrote the letter, but he could understand John's deep love towards him behind every word. Anger went through the memories living with his dear teacher and spaced out. He finally woke from his thoughts when the night had already come. He let out a deep sigh, not knowing who or what he sighed for. Remembering the method to operate the watch, Anger carefully saved the letter. He even made a second copy just in case. Then, he closed the letter. Feeling a bit lost, as well as an indescribable expectation, he opened the only folder on the desktop. Chapter 30, Saved Files. John said he left some gift for Anger. Anger did not think much about it, but when he opened the folder and saw the masses of documents in there, he finally understood how valuable they were. John had transferred all files saved in his brain chip into this folder. Astronomy, geography, literature, and novels. There are even some cultures and music sheets. Anger never knew why his teacher could know everything throughout history. John could cultivate plants, build houses, cook, and explain the knowledge of every subject. Now Anger understood. This was totally possible using the technology from Earth. Every newly born child on the Earth would receive a parasitic chip. This chip could be considered a computer without a network. It automatically saved various data and connected the data to the hippocampus on the brain so the data was never forgotten. This must be why John kept everything he knew even after crossing into another world. The chip on the brain could not be physically transferred, or else John might have given Anger the chip instead. It was bound to one's brain and would never be lost. Having the chip meant someone had the ability of instant photographic memory. Anger still had the holographic tablet though. It might take more time to memorize the knowledge since it could not be connected to the brain. However, as long as he was persistent, Anger would become well learned sooner or later. With that in mind, Anger carefully put the tablet away, close to his body. To him, the device possessed more value than anything in the world. With a holographic tablet, Anger's life changed greatly. He spent almost all his days on the tablet, and would only put it down when it needed to recharge using solar energy. He did not start reading John's data right away. Instead, he scanned his boxes of books bought from Moonwater City one by one and saved them into the tablet. As John said, knowledge was everything for a scholar. This was why Anger's first task was to transfer his books into the device. The scan process was not easy. The tablet had a camera for catching images, and the system could convert images into words. However, it could only do it for characters used on Earth, not the official language used in Goldspank Empire. Besides, the system only supported languages from Earth, so Anger could only save all the pictures into a folder for now. He would translate them into Chinese copies when he had time. After scanning all the books and assorting them, a week had already passed. Now Anger had nothing else to do. The life on the sea was dull, and Alan and Aline had been training their mana-channeling without paying him many visits. Anger felt lonely. To answer his curiosity, Anger began looking at the data saved in the tablet. First, he read some famous works published by scientists on Earth. However, he soon realized that much data in the articles only applied in the universe where the Earth was, so he began reading less and only looking for the ideas behind them. Anger's reading gradually expanded. When he was free, he even looked at the entertainment section, listened to some music from Earth, and read folk novels that had nothing to do with literature. After reading some novels, Anger understood what his teacher meant by saying having a higher purpose than the other novel heroes in his letter. Some of the novels that always kill heaven because heaven wants me dead or slay the god because the god is in my way were really embarrassing to look at, but there were still some of the transmigration novels that interested Anger and helped him pass the time. As he read more literature, Anger became more and more curious about the Earth. He really hoped he could go to the big cities someday and look at all the high-end science and technologies. What he did not know was that a subfolder in the entertainment folder contained videos several thousands of terabytes large, and every drama filmed in the cities could tell him what the Earth looked like. This was another story. One day, Anger rearranged the folders on the tablet and created two main categories, the Earth and my world. Then, he read a chapter of The Snows of Kilimanjaro, before he left his room to eat. Before he could reach the dining hall, a sharp whistle noise sounded across the whole ship. It came from multiple places, with each cycle consisting of 3 long blows and 2 short ones. Anger immediately realized that this was a red alert on the red bud. He quickly became serious about the situation and began walking back to his room. Mara told them that if the ship went into red alert, they had better stay in their own rooms. On his way back, Anger saw most of the other talents discussing over the matter with their doors opened. Some said a sea monster was attacking, some said about an incoming storm, and some mentioned a reef strike. Someone even said the cloud whale in the sky was about to attack the redbud. They were all guesses, all bad ones. Everyone appeared to be worried and terrified. Fear was something one would expect on the endless sea, but only the unpredictable future would make the fear worse. Anger was worried as well, even though he knew this would not change anything. He did not have the power to change his own fate right now, so all he could do was to pray for peace. Upon returning to his room, Anger quickly opened the air vent on the wall and looked towards outside using the small window. To his disappointment, he could not see anything. A thick mist had engulfed the ship for God knew how long. He could hardly see beyond 10 meters. The unknown could trigger a man's boundless imagination. Anger was only a teenager. He might be a bit more mature and independent compared to the other kids, but that did not mean he could stay calm now. He told himself that the alert was because of the great mist, and everything would be fine when the mist dissipated. However, he did not even believe himself. It was only the best excuse he could use to comfort himself when he could not do anything else. The hour hand on the clock slowly moved. It was nearly 4 in the afternoon, and the mist outside was still thick as before. The whistle indicating the end of the alert on the red bud never came. Everything seemed unchanged. And soon enough, something happened.